Well, hi everyone and welcome back. It's Thursday the 19th of March. This is Paul English Live here on WBN 324 and other assorted, tiresome streaming platforms, which we all love and enjoy. We're going out on Rumble and YouTube. This is 131. Do the numbers really matter anymore? I don't know. Welcome to the show, everyone. Relief is flooding over me like a wrinkled blanket because I think, fingers crossed, we've got off to a good start. Technically, of course. It's all about to go to mayhem any minute now. Lots of sunshine this week, of course. I always like to get in a quick weather report. We always do, don't we? I hope it's been sunny where you've been. It's been glorious here. I mean, it's not sunny now, is it? It's not sunny now. Well, it isn't here anyway. Just gone 8 o'clock here in the UK, 4 o'clock US Eastern Time. So welcome everybody to the show. What happened this week? I think we went through a day, didn't we? Where are we now? 19th. So we've got the 21st coming up, which is officially the first day of spring. But didn't we go through something like, what's it called? The spring equinox, where, you get 12 hours of darkness and 12 hours light? I think we did. One man who might know is Eric von Essex, but he possibly doesn't. Eric, hello, good evening, and welcome to the show. Hello.
And well, it's nice to be on the show, and welcome,
isn't it lovely?
Everybody. It is lovely, and I don't know about the light, but I think there must have been something about the moon phases, because what I was saying before we came on air is I got my bike out of the bike shed for the first time this year and gave it a good brush down, and I went for a ride on it. And I saw two nutters. I think it was National Nutter Day yesterday.
Was
it? 2 nutters and 3 ambulances, blue light flashing jobbies. So was it something to do with the moon phase or something like that? One bloke attacking a bag of litter on the shouting and hollering at it and kicking it. Another bloke headbutting a lamp. Why? Oh, he is headbutting a street lamp. I do not know, but he was headbutting it and screaming and shouting at that as well. So
that's quite a sight. That's quite a sight. Whereabouts was this melee taking place then? Locally in your area?
Yes. There's one at Cheshunt station. That was the nutter with the litter bag, and then I went through the Lee Valley, and it's all nice and woodlands and all countryside there, and then coming home. I was proceeding towards the Lee Valley, and that's where I saw the nutter. That was in Waltham Abbey, headbutting the street lamp and shouting and screaming at it. I think it's Scottish going, "You little bastard, you're doing that. I bash. I wouldn't like to do that again. You know what I mean." Yeah.
Well, maybe he was in training for
very.
Yeah, I mean, I think the street lamp would win, but maybe he was in training for the World Headbutting Championships. They're coming up soon, aren't they? I mean, I've never been, but I hear it's a bit of a blast, really. Everybody headbutt. There's something very savage and vicious about the headbutt. It's extremely, it's about as aggressive and horrible a thing as you can do, apart from, of course, other things which are even more horrible. But it's pretty horrible, isn't it? Yeah, I would have thought.
They do it in Scotland against the salmon, don't they? Because as the salmon's trying to come up the river, a load of drunken Scotsmen sit in the river trying to headbutt the salmon as it's coming up. It's flying up the river. Sorry, I think it's called nutting the salmon.
Is that right? Well,
see it like you little bastard.
Yeah. What time as well? Because we're just all sort of, wet about the weather over here. But tonight, it didn't get dark till about 6:35.
Same
or was it
here.
6:30, 6:35, 30, 35, something like that? It was.
Could have been
It's
40, 45, 40.
Yes,
maybe
40,
40
it'll be, well, next week it'll be 6:40, 45. I don't know. It's about 3 minutes a day or something, isn't it? Isn't it exciting?
Right, yeah.
You know, the things that have been happening all your life, they suddenly become even more exciting when you spot them again. But when our clocks, we haven't got long to go, have we, for our clockage? It's 2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks or 1 week? Hang on, 90. It must be 1 week.
Look in my diary.
1 week. It must be a week on Saturday. It must be a week on
Let's have a
Saturday.
look.
It will be.
No, it's not this week.
No. Have you got your almanac?
Yes,
Have you?
yes. Sunday the 29th, which British summertime begins. So it's not this Saturday, but it's the next one.
And peace and happiness will reign across this land, won't it?
There will be peace all over the place, and will be peace all over everyone. But by the way, does anybody know in chat out to clear foggy headlamps? Because my plastic headlamps on my car have all fogged up, and I thought I cured it last year, but I haven't. I tried WD-40 and toothpaste is the other idea of rubbing it over. Do you suffer from foggy headlamps, Paul, or is it just an embarrassing thing I've got?
I think it's probably something from the part of the world. Yeah, foggy headlamps. I can't recall. I mean, I'm carless at the moment and not really too fussed for some reason. Yeah, I mean, it's first time in about 40 years. You can speak what on foggy headlamps or being carless, Paul? What can you speak on?
No, what you do is you go to the car shop and you get some car polish, like a buffing compound.
Yes.
Right.
And a soft rag, and use that to buff the plastic lenses.
Oh.
And just keep buffing until the fogginess goes away.
Ah.
And that will take care of it.
Well,
don't say you don't learn anything on this show, everybody. Now you know how to defog your
right.
This is brilliant. We're just a font or something like that of knowledge at times. Aren't we? Yeah, we are.
That's right.
Yeah.
But my old Toyota doesn't have that problem because I've got glass headlamps on that, and glass doesn't fog over. So that's. I wish we'd go back to glass headlamps. It's far better because you don't get foggy problems, you know.
You don't want foggy problems. There's nothing worse than foggy problems. They're not good.
No,
they're not.
Well, a bit embarrassing, aren't they? You know.
Yes. Yeah, they are. They are.
Yes. Anyway, do you know what the poll? You know the Fockem Poll that we are electing the next prime monster for this country. And,
so a little bit of context setting. Had you started this last week on last week's show? I know you've been running it for a little while. So explain to the listeners, Eric, what you mean by the Fockem Poll.
Well, the Fockem Poll, you see, it's on. Where is it now? I'm just trying to find it now. It's on my Telegram channel, and I think that I'll give you the runners up when I can actually find the bloody thing. Oh, here it is. Now, so far, I'll put down for a laugh, as every British politician is a puppet of the usury scammers. Let's vote who would do a better job as Prime Monster of Britain. You see, and I've said Basil Fawlty, Mr. Methane, cardboard cutouts of the Cray twins, Lassie, reincarnation of Sir Les Patterson, Pinhead, Desperate Dan, Fat Slags, jar of Peter Mandelson's hemorrhoid cream, Felix and his amazing underpants from Viz magazine, Sooty or Skippy the bush kangaroo. And so far, would you like to hear it? This is nail biting. This is.
I've got bated breath here, whatever that is, but I've got it.
So far, there are two winners, but it could change. There's 38 votes have gone in, and the two winners are Lassie at 18% and Skippy the bush kangaroo at 18%. And coming second, close by, is Sooty and Basil Fawlty. And do you know what? Next to that is, I'm just looking now, 10% is Fat Slags from Viz Comic. And down from that is Mr. Methane, which I was very sad because I voted for Mr. Methane.
Really?
Cardboard cut, yes. Cardboard cut
I'm
out.
Surprised, Eric. I'm surprised by your choice, but never mind.
But do you know who got zero? It was a jar of. Next to it was Felix and his amazing underpants from Viz magazine got zero, and a jar of Peter Mandelson's hemorrhoid cream, and he got 5%. So I thought that would win it.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to say about it. 38 votes. Isn't that a bigger turnout than we got for the last general election in this country?
It is, and I think
got to be more.
As we're going to have the local elections, unless it's cancelled because of the fuel crisis or whatever, if some politician knocks on your door, you can say, look, we voted for Skippy the bush kangaroo or Lassie the dog. So we want that. And unfortunately, but as everything's in reverse, please can we have Mr. Methane instead?
By the way, Eric, I think some people are quite impressed by your exciting life, causing people to headbutt around you. Alice says, what an exciting life Eric does live. I wish I had that reaction on people. Well, I don't know about it. I'm assuming that's it. I had a good chat with Philip the other day. You know Philip, don't you, Eric? Actually, nobody knows Philip. I didn't know him at all until I had a good chat with him yesterday. I was down the old beach taking these spring strolls. It's like a bit like a spring roll, and it was a lovely day, really lovely. And a guy comes up to me, and I found out at the end of the conversation he was called Philip. Great guy, really great guy. I'm always sort of sparking off these conversations with people, particularly down on the beach, and everybody's looking for a chat. They are really. Everybody's looking for a quick chat. And local guy started telling me his life story. I didn't ask for it, but I kind of got it. It was great, really. I didn't go to school. I said, oh, right, that's probably why you're talking quite normally. He said, well, I had a lot of trouble at school. And then he was talking about this, that, and the other. He'd be about mid to late 70s. I think he probably told me. But, just a solid guy. He was talking about his grandchildren now about to go to the same school that he went to. And I said, I don't think really you ought to let them go at all, frankly. I think it's not. He said, some of the teachers are still there. I said, oh, you wag, So, but he was just a good, jolly-hearted chap. And, nice little spring walk down there the other day. He was great. So, Philip, Excellent. If you're not listening, because you won't be, because he doesn't even know that this is going on, but I'm just going to pretend in my mind that he is. Nice chat the other day, Philip. Anyway, it was great. Oh. Yeah, good guy.
He's not one of these people that you feel like giving up the will to live after about 15 minutes talking to him.
Not really, no. I manage. No. I don't know about you. I manage to sort of get out of situations like that pretty sharpish. Like, I'm terribly sorry. Yeah, I've got a bun in the oven, or something like that. I'm sorry, I'm baking, or I've got to go and pickle some prunes, or whatever. Yeah, there's always something that you can say. There's always something you can say that will be a rather offhand, risible remark.
Have a methane movement. That usually gets rid of them.
Well, Eric, I don't have your skills in that department, I'm afraid. We're all sadly lacking in that regard in compared to you. You'll have to give lessons in that. How to get out of a conversation as fast as humanly possible by Eric von Essex. Yeah, that'd be quite a skill to have, wouldn't it? I don't know.
Yes. Well, it'll all be in my book soon on bovine excrement. And this is a reader's guide, because you think about it, if you want to find out a spelling in the old days, you looked up a dictionary. You want to find different ways of putting things, you look up thesaurus, but there's nothing on bovine excrement. I'm saying that politely. I was going to say bullshit, but I thought that's a bit rude. So I'm actually doing like a dictionary of bullshit, so that if someone's bullshitting, you can actually go to the page and say, oh, yeah, here it is, page 23 or something like that.
Well, speaking of bovine excrement, because we're always looking for a little segue and a link into things that way. Well, I am desperately as the show's going on, right? But you kindly sent me something the other day, which I want to read out, from the Traditional Britain, I think it was, Telegram group. We've talked on here repeatedly, and will continue to talk about the psychological problems of our so-called political leaders, but it extends into all these spheres of so-called leadership. We talk about psychopaths and sociopaths, the dark personality, the dark web, as it were, of their minds, and all this, that, and the other. But there was a post that went up. I don't know what it was extracted from. It doesn't really matter. I think this is pretty authoritative. You can tell from the way it was written and put together. I just want to read it out. It's an observation about Keir Starmer. You might have heard of him. You heard of him? Keir Starmer, Eric? Ring a bell?
Does ring a bell, yes. Is he that glove puppet? I think he's a
He
glove
might
puppet,
be.
isn't he?
I was wondering whether his first name was Juan, and Keir's his middle name. Would make it
Yes.
slightly more interesting, wouldn't it? Juan Keir Starmer. It's much. See where I'm coming from? I'm taking your lead. I'm taking your lead
Yes,
on this.
yes. Or
So-
what they did on Spitting Image was it a Keir very interesting Starmer. Do you remember that with that snooker player who's boring?
Oh,
They tried
Steve
to sort of
Davis.
Steve,
Yeah.
Steve very interesting Davis. You know.
Let me read this out because I know you all like a nice tale. It's not really a tale. It's just some quotes and things. It says, it just comes in halfway through a paragraph. It says, cabinet ministers and number 10 advisors strained for loyalty, but it proved too difficult for some. He is, said one influential aide upon their departure from Downing Street, the least intellectually curious person I have ever met. Said another politician upon whom Starmer relied heavily, he can only prepare by reading briefing books for hours on end. He doesn't brainstorm. He has no fixed views on anything. There's no clarity because there's no belief. There's no belief because there's no understanding. There's no understanding because there's no curiosity. Said a senior civil servant who observed him closely, he is not a compassionate man. Well, knock me down with a feather. He's careless about people around him. It's just not warm. He just doesn't think very hard about other people. And a once close advisor, witheringly, I don't think he has a theory of power. I don't think he's ever sat down and read any history or has any idea of how power works. I just don't think he would be attracted to the kind of historical figures who got stuff done. I thought that was really rather telling. I mean, it'd be good to know exactly where it came from, but it, in a more eloquent way than we tend to put it, because we're full of venom when we say these things, it kind of gets the point across. And, it made me think, you remember that film? Actually, it's more than a film, of course. It's a whole sort of psychological conditioning process, The Manchurian Candidate from the 60s. And I think they remade it again.
Oh, yeah.
And that's really what you're thinking about, that this guy, they're describing someone, which we've all noticed, everybody said there's something not right with him. He's psychologically, if that's the right word, he's just dead on some level.
Yeah.
There's such a huge part of what you would say is a normal personality is completely missing. It's simply not there. And it's why he never has shame. Have you noticed? He never gets embarrassed, colours up.
That's right.
Or there's literally no shame. It's as if he doesn't comprehend anything apart from a rule book, like they were saying. And I think, like we've said earlier on, I'm sure we were saying this a couple of years ago or whenever he rocked up, is that he actually needs help. I'm serious. I've said it all along. There's something not right with him.
I agree with you. And the thing is, he looks as if he's had a brain transplant that's rejected him. He's sort of standing there. And the
Question.
thing is, I have an in-law that's like that, and you try and make a conversation with him sometimes, and he just sit and look straight through you and just be like a robot that's just been unplugged, and you're trying to push the conversation. You just go,
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But they control the situation by being like that. They're horrendous.
Does he have 6 fingers?
I don't think
Benjamin
so.
Nutty Knickers does, though, doesn't he?
Yeah, it does. Well, he could
No,
have
does
6
he?
fingers. If he has 6 fingers, he has absolutely no soul, nothing behind his eyes. Descendant of Nephilim, or like a walk-in, like there's a demon that's basically walking his body around, and that just isn't normal.
No, he's not normal.
It's just not right. I mean, the guy's brain is disconnected. He has absolutely no concept of right, wrong, good, bad, or indifferent. He's got to study things incessantly just to sound reasonably coherent, and he screws that up.
Yep. Yeah.
I think he's either a clone, a troll, or a Nephilim.
There's something, or basically a Manchurian candidate. I mean, I just think he's being groomed for this in some particular way. And something, I mean, he took himself off to Czechoslovakia, didn't he, when he was in his early 20s to become a communist, which is, of course, a bizarre decision. And I'm saying he took himself off there. I don't know whether he did that or whether he was under instructions already and had already been groomed into certain sort of conditions and told everything that was going to happen. But he is like a guy that just reads the rule book but doesn't comprehend the underlying meaning of the rules. It's just all about... anyway, I know we're kind of only repeating ourselves here, and we think it would be great if they could get rid of him. But maybe, I mean, the rest of the people that are supporting him, you've got to question they must have similar sort of standards of no standards, if you know what I mean. It's just, who would they replace him with? Not that I fret about these things. I don't view this as sort of like the solution, but it is a problem. The solution is not sort of that they find a better person in the Labour Party, so really it's all going to improve. I mean, that's nonsense, obviously. That's asinine. But they are a problem. They cause so much trouble everywhere they go and do these things. So it's, it's just confirmation, really, many of the things that we've talked about on and off. You don't have to be a genius to work this stuff out, but it is worth airing it in public and saying it, I think, every now and again, just that we don't forget that we're actually being governed by someone who's psychologically unfit, probably to run a tobacconist. And I'm not trying to insult tobacconists at all with that, but he's not. He's an extremely, I think he's ill. And because he's ill. I mean, he's got a spiritual or a psychological disease of some sort, and it makes him unsuited to be in any position of authority, let alone supposedly governing this country, which of course we know he doesn't, which is why he obviously must have been put there, because his handlers really, want a sort of pleb like this. What a wretched life he must lead. I don't feel sorry for him or anything, because he's causing far too much harm. He's a complete nutter on one level, but he probably doesn't even know that, does he? So,
but how did he get into such a position without having a personality? That's what I question.
Yes.
I mean, it's got no charisma. I thought that John Major, who was like a bus, he
was a bit
collect
dull,
bus numbers.
It was very dull.
Very dull. And when they said he had an affair with the Wiener Curry, I fell off my seat with laughter. Hello, Edwina. Do I take my knickers off or not? But I mean, I think they did that to sort of make him look interesting. But no, he is just a complete. Well, I mean, I thought he was dull, but he looks absolutely top O next to Keir Starmer. I mean,
I know, it's just, is it because we're just sort of, on the verge of becoming old gits? Or maybe we've been old gits for ages anyway. Everybody just looks worse. I know they were all bad at the time, and you think, well, it can't get any worse than this. And yet it consistently does. I mean, at least Major had the world's largest philtrum, didn't he? I think I've mentioned this before, but it was absolutely colossal, that thing. I mean, and the spitting image puppet of him really made hay on that facial feature. It was just ridiculous. Upper lip. Absolutely enormous thing. Absolutely gigantic. Yeah. Flapping around in the breeze there, like it was completely unruly and out of hand. Mad. Absolutely mad.
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah. Sorry?
I mean, there was something... I think there's something wrong with most... Well, was it... anyone that wants to be a politician is good enough reason not to be a politician. And... I don't know whether people have asked you. They said, "Oh, why don't you have this politician on, that politician on, or ex-politician who's going against the breed?" No, I won't have a politician on my show at all. I don't want a politician on, because there is a certain breed. Why on earth would anybody want to go into the Houses of Parliament? For God's sake, it must be bonkers. Eric? Yeah.
Keir Starmer is the perfect politician. He has not the capacity for independent thought, so he won't question the orders of his handlers and his puppet masters. He will just do as he is told. He's the perfect politician.
He probably is.
He's perfect. We will build him. Yes. We will control him.
We will rebuild him.
We will rebuild him. He will drone on and on and on and on. He will be impervious to criticism. He won't understand anything. He will just say the lines he's given. He's perfect. The $6 million Prime Minister. That's what it is, yeah. Anyway, changing tack a little, although I think we're going to return to this theme. I'm sort of on for politics and religion tonight, a little bit. I've still got this thing in the back of my head about politics, that phrase either from Aristotle or Plato, which is, if you don't get involved with it, and by the way, I would suggest we're all involved with it, whether we like it or not. I don't mean we support it or we think it's a great thing. It's just that we are at so much of our lives is at the effect of what these people do, unfortunately, because of the situation, how it's matured over centuries. So I'm on for a bit of chat about these sorts of things tonight. But a couple of letters in from listeners. Unfortunately, not of this show, but of something else. And I thought the first one, Eric, is kind of right up your street. This is it says this. This is from Jeff Derrick from Inham Nook. I don't know where Inham Nook is. Anyway, he writes, he says, in pondering which fruit most sounds like the breaking of wind, the kumquat wins out for me. I am, of course, happy to be proven wrong by any readers whose knowledge of fruits is greater than mine. And I thought, who might know about that? And Eric, I just wondered if you knew of any fruits that sound more like the breaking of wind than the word kumquat.
Yes, I can't, but it's a bit like when Orson Welles was going to act with Edward Woodward, and he'd never heard of Edward Woodward, and they said, you're going to, your co-star is Edward Woodward, and he says, sounds like a fart in the bath. Yeah.
Well, whenever I see the word kumquat, I'm always reminded of that sketch with W.C. Fields in, which is where he's running a grocery store. You ever seen that one? W.C. Fields running a grocery store. I can't remember what film it's from. It's absolutely brilliant. In terms of physical comedy and tension and madness, it's just superb. And he's running a grocery store, and there's a guy yelling at him for his kumquats, but he's serving all these other people, and the whole thing's getting out of hand. He can't actually keep up. Everything's getting smashed up. It's brilliant. Anyway, I want my kumquats, demands the surly customer. And that made a big imprint on me when I was a young lad and saw it for the first time, because I never saw a kumquat until I was, I don't know, in my 30s or something. It was a big day for me.
Same here. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen a kumquat either. So,
anyway, so
we missed out on the life.
Yeah, so that's the fruit thing. If anybody out there can think of a better fruit that sounds like the breaking of wind, good grief, I'm sorry. But when I saw this, Eric, I immediately thought of you. I thought it might be a relation or something, Jeff Derrick, but it's quite good. This other letter, it is of a slightly different hue. This is from Rob Wilford, sent in by email. He writes, he says, dogs are quite mad. I'm not going to be able to read this. Dogs are quite mad when you think about it. If I spent all day angrily shouting at anyone who walked past my house, tried to attack the postman, then went and did a shit in the middle of my local park, I'd be arrested, which indeed I was. Robert Wilford by email. So I just thought we would throw that one in. We're getting the vulgar bits out now, although there's probably more vulgar bits coming up, but I just thought we would throw that in.
It's nothing like getting your vulgar bits out, is there? It's nice to get your vulgar bits out.
You've got to get your vulgar bits out. And of course, those aren't letters that came to me, unfortunately. I don't get interesting things. I get interesting stuff, but nothing as good as that. That's, of course, lifted from Viz Comic, where they have this knack of coming up with these absolutely amazing letters. It's just the heart and soul of that thing. So shout out to my brother who kindly sent that over to me this morning whilst I was drinking my tea, and I sort of splurted most of it out of the keyboard when I read that. And that doesn't happen that often, but there you go. That's a little insight into the sense of humour that I sometimes have, but it's all good stuff. Anyway, what else? Anything else been going on this week? I just realised I've got sort of an ongoing problem, which is I'm sort of so immersed in doing things at the moment. I've barely had time to glower over and get cross by anything coming across my desk because I'm just simply not looking. I've got to say, on one level, going back to this whole phone addiction thing, I'm kind of happy about it, but I've not been able to even read a book over the last week or do anything like that too much. It's just been all sort of domestic things. Although I had a fun thing happen last night. I went out to a little meeting about a business which it looked very good, but it's not really for me. It's not for the timing thing, but it looked quite interesting. And there was a guy there, and we were shaking hands to say goodbye, and as one does. And I'm a disfigured cripple, Eric. I don't know if you know that.
No, are you really?
So what happens is that the middle finger on my right hand, the last phalanx, the bit that's got the nail on, have you got one of those?
Yes.
Well, I don't.
Look, yes.
I don't have one, right?
Really?
Yeah, it's gone. It just, yeah. And when I was asked...
fell off one day.
Tiger, mate. It's always a tiger. It was a tiger for years. Yeah. How did you lose that, Paul? Tiger. Young lad at the zoo. My dad put me too near the thing. Tiger took it. It seemed to impress my young nephews when they were very, very small and everything. But the guy that I met exactly the same bit missing on his hand. It was amazing.
Isn't that weird? Dave Allen, he had
he was index finger. He'd lost, I think, the last two bits, the last two phalanxes on his index finger. But I've just got the one bit. Anyway, I said, look, there's a club. Maybe there's loads of us. So, we need to form a union or something. All the people have got bits of their hands blown off or something. I suppose there's quite a lot of them, but maybe it specifically has to be the last phalanx of the middle finger. Anyway, there you go. And we were therefore comparing notes when he blew his off with a firework when he was 11. I went, oh, that must have hurt. He said, yeah, it was my own fault. I was fooling around, found all these big fireworks and fooling around with them, and one went off in his hand and took his finger off. The rest of his hand looked okay. Yeah. But he was doing exactly the same things at school that I did once he'd got the injury, which is sticking it up your nose, and it looks as though you've got a finger all the way up into your brain. It's very impressive.
Oh, dear.
Ugh, people got to stop doing that. Oh, no. Well, so there we go.
Well, my mother never forgot it. She saw a young child lose a finger on a deck chair.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the old deck chairs, they're bloody
I
dangerous.
do. Yeah.
Yes, and very lethal in many ways. But no.
Well, maybe we could get the government to protect us from deck chair injuries. What do you think? I mean, you'd think they would have stepped in by now and protected us. They were. Actually, I always remember my mum and dad down at the city. Watch it with that chair. You'll catch your fingers in that. And all that kind of stuff, yeah.
Yes.
Exciting days. Deck chair injuries.
Oh, it is. Yes. You don't hear of deck chair industries very much. Injuries there. I've got my words in a mucking fuddle now. You don't hear of deck chair injuries very much nowadays, do you? You used to hear about it a lot. Yes. Yeah. But I'm sorry to hear you've lost your finger. Did you? I guess you didn't find it again when you lost it.
No, I went looking for it. I ground it off in a bicycle chain wheel. How about that? Yeah, it was quite a thing.
Ooh,
it really stung, Eric. That was what I was
think it would.
It really, it was really, blood everywhere. And my instinct was to go and try and find it. This is about 1974. So I thought, it must be around somewhere. Actually, I was telling everybody last night that it was a perfect accident, if you can have such a thing. And I do mean that from a timing point of view. Mm-hmm. It was about 500 yards from my home, but well enough away. And no mobile phones then, you see. It was all semaphore signals and little running boys with messages and things all around where I lived. Yes. You boy, go and take this message to Mr. Taylor in 43. It was all that kind of stuff. Not. And I picked my bike up, put it against this wall, and I was a bit sort of stunned. And I going up and down the gutter to see if it had fallen off somewhere. But it just got mashed. I think it was probably stuck in the bike wheel, and I didn't even look at that. A bus pulls up on the opposite side of the road immediately, because it was just opposite a bus stop. A woman gets off. She walks across the road, looks at me. She said, "I'm a nurse." I said, "Oh, I've just come off duty. I've just come off duty. What have you done?" "Oh, God." She says, "We need to get an ambulance for you." I said, "Okay." Literally, within 5 seconds, a police car came round the corner. She flagged it down. I got in the car and I went straight off to hospital. Yay! That's how things used to work back then. I just got lucky. It was amazing.
Must have been bloody painful, I would have thought.
Yeah, it was. Well, she sort of kindly put something over it, so I didn't look at it, because it's sort of like the look of these things when you've got bits missing and, you've never had a bit missing and you think, oh, God, I'm going to die or something like that. But no, the thing was, when I went to hospital, they actually forgot about me for 8 hours.
That's good of them.
They put me on a trolley. And my mum and dad came down later on because it happened about lunchtime. And they came down about 8 o'clock and they said, "Oh, we found you at last." I said, "Yeah, I've been down here." He said, "They'd lost you. They'd put me on one of those gurney things or whatever and wheeled me down a thing and all that kind of stuff." So it was great. Afterwards, anyway, it all went pretty well. And I'd also smashed up, I'm sure this is riveting for everybody. Well, let's just get this out of the way. I'd also smashed up my index finger just next to it on those sash windows at school. The things that you slam down? Well,
blimey, yes.
Yeah, I was in that period. I was in and out with cuts and bust my chin about 2 years later and all sorts of stuff. It was just that period where you've got too much energy and your body's grown too quick and you're just banging into the physical universe and doing it up. Anyway, so it was all black anyway before I even did this. It probably actually was responsible in a way for the injury, but or how I created it. But the doctor said, we've amputated. We've amputated the bone sticking out of the end. Oh, great. It wasn't too bad, really. And he said, and also your other finger was mangled up. So he said, we've taken the nail off and we've stitched that up as well. So this is my index finger and my middle finger, right? And they wrapped them up separately. So I literally had a V sign all in a sort of cast and bandages. It was great. And I went back to school and they go, Paul, can you stop doing that? I can't help it, sir. It's just the way it's bandaged. But, of course, I was making hay with it as much as I possibly could. Yeah, it made me quite popular for a bit.
Was this your left or right hand?
Right. Yeah. And I am right-handed.
So it's your writing hand.
It is.
I'm left-handed, so it would, but...
left.
Yes.
You're a lefter, a left hooker. This explains a lot, Eric. It's all coming out now, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a student there at school called Jonathan Stocks, who will not hear this ever, I suppose. I'm assuming he might still be alive. He came up to me, nice lad, but sort of not with it. And he said, will it grow back? I said, yeah, Jonathan, yeah, it'll grow back. I'll show you in a couple of months. It's going to grow back. It'll just do that. Of course, I have seen things where people have grown bones back. Have you seen those things? They've just sort of grown their bones back.
I have heard of that, yes. Yes,
yeah.
I've heard of that, yes.
Very interesting. Yes. So maybe I wasn't lying, even though I was lying in my own mind, but maybe the truth is he could have grown back. So there we go. Anyway, listeners out there, have you got any interesting injuries? If you have, call in and let us know. I haven't got any.
Not too embarrassing, no.
Not too embarrassing or things for the family.
Yeah.
Call in and let us know about your injuries. Not really, but yeah. What else? What else was there this week? Anything in the news, Eric? I'm relying on you. I've just...
it's shock news that President Trump might be sane. He might be, but I very much doubt it. That's just a conspiracy theory that he's sane. I think he's completely bonkers, barking.
The whole thing's bonkers.
Paul,
the whole
Paul,
thing's bonkers.
I mean, what's your view from America? I mean, do the people around the States realise he's bonkers, or is he keeping it to himself?
I used to be on the fence about Trump, and I am completely off the fence now. I am purely in the other side camp until he does something extraordinary, and I mean so extraordinary that I can't even imagine something he could do that would be extraordinary enough for me to jump back in his camp. I'm going to be happy on the other side of the fence. I'll be leaning against it, watching everything and giggling.
Yeah.
Kind of a nervous laughter. But I had made I made a comment on another program that I'm on in the morning, and it caused quite a stir. I said, I used to be on the fence about Trump, but I'm telling you that my Trump cheerleader uniform is locked in the closet, and I flushed the key. Pom-poms and all.
Paul, we're pleased to hear
quite
that.
A stir.
We're very pleased to hear that. Some are calling him the son of perdition, aren't they? I mean, he's being, there's nothing, it's always the same. It's always the same. By the way, I'm just hopping back to what I was talking about. Sparked off lots of injury chat here in both the Rumble and the YouTube thing. Billy Silver writes, I met two Australians years ago. Each had a fingertip missing. One left, one right. Apparently, they rolled a car on the roof and both had their hands on the roof at the time, as is the Australian habit. So, people are driving along with their hands on top of the roof. So there you go.
Yes.
I bet they were bound together in that moment for the rest of their lives. Yeah, that's interesting.
I bet they were.
Yeah.
Blimey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Painful. Makes your bloody eyes water, doesn't it? That one does.
Yeah. Gary Davies says that he talks with a limp and walks with a stutter. So that's challenging, Gary. That's quite good. Quite like that. My granddad lost a finger, says Orwellian 88, whilst working on a trawler boat in the North Sea when a door slammed shut in a storm. He always joked they tried to sew it back on in Iceland, but did it the wrong way. Yeah. Everybody's got a bit missing. Better to have a bit of finger missing than your entire brain, unlike Keir Starmer or whatever he's got missing. But yeah, I think
I worked with a bloke whose father was in the First World War,
right,
going over the top on that. And before they went over the top, they had a choice. They can either take more ammunition with them, or more first field dressing with them. And for some weird reason, he had a premonition, and he took loads of field dressing with him, and he lost a leg that day. And first field dressing came in handy, because when he was found, because the casualties were so high, they've run out of all this dressings and that, and he's came in useful, so it probably saved his life. So it's surprising, these things that you hear about. People have a premonition that saves their lives. I have a cousin who was due to go to, because my father was youngest in a family, and that's why my cousins are always elderly, because my father's sister was about 20 years older than him. But what I was going to say is my cousin, he was going to go to America during World War II, and he was all packed, ready to go, because they were sending children to America to avoid the bombings and things like that.
Right.
And his mother had a premonition, and he didn't go, and the ship sunk. And I think he was in the Merchant Navy after the war, and he wanted to have a dirty weekend with his girlfriend, who was in Northern Ireland. And he went to Wales, and he missed the ship that he should have gone on, and that sunk as well. So he said he was a very lucky bloke to yeah. But, these premonitions, they do work. I think they do. And they reckon that there's a scientific evidence that premonitions work. And that's what saved us years ago from getting eaten by a lion.
Maybe it's a bit like when all the birds and everything all fly off when an earthquake's coming. Maybe we've still got some connection left to our old instincts and stuff like that. And some people are a little bit more strongly than others.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
But what do people think about rationing? Because they reckon that they're going to start fuel rationing soon and food rationing. So I'd stock up with your tin cans, and Survival Steve is the man to ask about that, because they reckon the thing to stock up with is coffee and rice. Mm-hmm. They're the two things that's going to run out soon. So nip down to Aldi tomorrow mornings and pick up a load of rice and coffee, and but don't do it until I can buy shares in it. Okay, so there we go.
I never know with these things. I mean, the only time it didn't affect me because I was a teenager was back in the 70s with OPEC and all that kind of stuff. And I do remember the long sort of car queues back then. And of course, we had nowhere near the volume of traffic that we've got now. But then they probably didn't have the same sort of transportation system for getting trillions of gallons of oil into the country now, or whatever it was. I mean, while we're still on these kind of slightly serious things, and we will hover in and out of that, Alice Gorgeous wrote to me the other day. Alice, I hope you're okay with me saying this. I think it's the right thing to say. So her uncle, Tom Georgeson, who played the role in A Fish Called Wanda, you remember him?
Oh, yes.
George, and what they did, they changed his name around and called him George Thomason, which is quite good, really. Yes. Anyway, Tom, Alice's uncle, passed away yesterday, I think it was. So our condolences for that, Alice. He was a great guy. I liked him a lot. He played, who was it? Was it Clamp? He played Clamp in Bleak House, an assistant to Mr. Tulkinghorn. They had proper names back then, didn't they?
Yes,
Mr. Well, they didn't. Only in Dickens novels did they have proper names. They're all made up. But yeah, he was good in that. That's the one thing I remember him for, probably more than anything. It's a sort of a supporting role, but he was very good. And he was great in A Fish Called Wanda. Unbelievable. He was great. He was brilliant. 89, I think he was. So good innings, I think. Something like that. So our condolences, Alice. Thank you for letting me know. And I hope you're okay with me sharing it. If not, I guess I'll hear from your solicitors next week or something like that. So, but I just wanted everybody to know. Yeah, it's good. He was a good guy, a good egg. Loads of things. I think he was in Boys from the Black stuff as well, actually. I went over and had a look. There's a big record of him on Wikipedia if you want to look him up. Tom Georgeson, as in George and son, all one word. Tom Georgeson. And there's a sort of a brief obituary and an account of his career there on Wikipedia if you want to check that out. Now, you were just speaking about Steve James, weren't you? Who you know as Survival Steve. And Steve's going to be joining us for the first time on this show. I've done quite a few shows. I hung out with Steve on your show, Eric. In fact, we had a bit of a blast on Monday, didn't we? It was pretty good.
We did, didn't we? Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
We did. And I want to kind of pick up on some of those threads that you launched or we got into on Monday, because I thought they were pretty meaty and good, really just looking at the whole political thing and what's the use of the damn thing anyway, which of course is pretty much...
What's the point of government? That's the thing. What's the point of government? And when you think about it, it's been imposed upon us because... Yep. Could we do without government? And I think we can. And I think we'd do a far superior job if we didn't have government, because when you look at societies around the world that don't have government or things that were organised, like, for example, look at the Yellow Vests. They didn't have a leader. It worked perfectly. The Amish, they don't have a leader as such. So I've been told it's the elders that make decisions. But there's lots and lots of instances where there hasn't been a government and it wasn't lawless and everything worked right. So what do you need government for? I really don't see the point, really. And we could do very well without one. I think we would absolutely boom.
Well, I'm looking forward to sort of getting back in and warming up some of the embers from that conversation from Monday. I mean, it's an ongoing theme around here, isn't it? Anyway, but it was this whole thing about the history of how. Okay, we're going to use this word government because this is the word that's used. Yeah, we are at the effect of it in so many different ways. I mean, I'm looking at all of these sorts of approaches that you can take to change your status. This doesn't mean to say that I'm going to be able to do that. I think practically it's possible. When I say me, you just look at your time commitments in all these other areas. And my immediate sort of reaction with any of this sort of stuff is, why should I have to spend 1 second lifting my finger to kick out of my life something that shouldn't be in it in the first place? It's a big scam. This big scheme, and we've talked about, we were mentioning it, weren't we, on Monday, from the birth certificate onwards, this whole thing to do with your status and your controllability as an asset, an assumed asset in their system, which they boss around. And we were talking about this actually at this little sort of business presentation thing last night, or at least the topic got onto that later on, because one of the things that they were talking about there was about trusts and protecting your assets and all this kind of stuff. And how do you go about doing it? And it's you have experts for this. Now, I understand why you have experts, but my question is why? Why should it be such a complicated, horrific challenge and tons of hours of desk work to deal with an entity that's imposed itself on your... I just, I can't help it. I'm just impatient with these things. I'm going... It's a bit like someone starts talking to you and you go, listen... I know you want to talk to me, but I haven't got the time to hear what you're saying. I'm not interested in what you're saying. This is not a productive use of your or my time. I'm off. Right. And that should be the end of it. But of course, as we know, it isn't. It isn't the end of it. And they pester you. And this is one of the problems of being rich. I know most people won't think it's a problem, but it is. Because I think it is, to some degree. Very wealthy people have to be exceedingly wealthy to afford a bunch of experts to protect them and their wealth from the other bunch of people that want to take it off them. And they spend a lot of their life fretting about and thinking about what they're supposed to do. And there's a great benefit in actually being a peasant. I know there's a lot of drawbacks to it as well. But when you haven't got much, you're not a target for thievery, are you? And the number one thief is the government, without a doubt.
That's right. Yes.
They are. You're still a target, though.
Oh, you are. You're still a target. You're absolutely right. You're always a target.
Yeah, you're still a target because the private for-profit prison systems, they will incarcerate you and securitize your incarceration. It doesn't matter if you have anything. They can still make money off of you by trading your birth bond. And if you want to get out from underneath their control, the only thing you need to do is file an affidavit stating categorically and clearly that you are not one of their serfs. You're not one of their subjects. That you do not agree or consent to their control or authority. And you file that in the public, and your words become law at that point. Like what we do is we file an affidavit. It's my intent to be a national and not a 14th Amendment citizen of the United States. That is it. That's throwing off the 14th Amendment presumption.
Yep.
It's throwing off the administrative rulemaking presumption, and it brings you back to pre-bankruptcy 1933 constitutional common law. And because you've said those words and put them in the public, when you get dragged into court, you're considered to be an imbecile. They don't listen to any words coming out of your mouth. So if you don't have a piece of paper claiming your freedom in your individuality, you're not going to be able to make that point when you get to court. You could raise your hand all you want and say, I don't consent to this. Well, shut up, you're an idiot, and you're out of order. Say one more word, I'll hold you in contempt, and they lock you up for contempt.
Mm-hmm.
And let you out if and when you apologize for being contemptible.
I am contemptible, though. I think most of us here are quite contemptible, aren't we? I think we are.
Yes.
Yeah, we probably pride ourselves on it.
I mean, the way you describe,
the way you describe it for the States, Paul, it sounds almost as if a layman could comprehend that. There may be people over here on this side of the war who have come up with a pitch that's as clear and as concise as what you've just said, but I've yet to hear it. And I think, again, it's part of this sort of challenge with taking what start off as sort of a huge array of complicated facts from different agencies and this, that, and the other. You've got to check it out. And this decision happened in 1845, and that rules this out, and all this stuff stands in law. And you look at the average guy and gal who are completely burdened with all sorts of other things that are dragging them through the mire. By the same token, of course, many don't pay any attention to anything. It's different for every individual or little family or whatever it is. But they're in such a situation, the thing, I suppose, that gets all of our guys, certainly gets mine. Most people are, in my experience, good-hearted. I rarely meet people that aren't. I mean, generally, people are polite. They are over here where I live, and they're friendly, and it was like that when I was a child. And everywhere I've been, people are pretty decent. I think when you get into cities, people are a little bit more, they're more distant because they're all sort of revved up. I'm going to make tons and tons of money and all this kind of stuff. But it's finding the time and coming up with the Janet and John communication approach. I know I bang on about this, and when I get some time, I do want to sit down. I mean, I look at what I would want. I go, how to change your status in 15 easy lessons or 45 lessons or whatever it is. And each one's a couple of pages, something like that. You go, this is your situation. This is what's happened. This is the process. And you have to have a really simple overview, quick. You go, you've got it? Okay, now we're going to have to put a little bit of work in because you need to understand exactly what these processes are. But I think once you've got people swallowing the bait, it's not necessarily the best phrase, but once you've got it and you go, I'm hungry for more, then I think you can do something with your audience. But it's very difficult. I noticed even last night, this was a business thing about a crypto exchange. It looked good. And I was asked whether I was interested or not. And I'm not because it doesn't look as though it's got positive, but my plate's full. I'm going, I actually can't think about any more things at the moment. I'm at which is always a worry because you think you can just take on anything and just do all this stuff. And I've learned in time that this is simply not true. You end up giving 5% of your attention to a thing and you can't see it through to the end and make it count.
Right. It just costs you money.
Yeah.
No, it's got to be simple. It's got to be simple, especially for Britain, because Britain's got something we don't have. Britain has the free soil doctrine. It specifically denies that involuntary servitude exists in Britain, but it does not deny voluntary servitude. So just like a last will and testament, if you want your estate disposed of or distributed in a certain manner, you have to put it in a will. That will becomes your voice when you can no longer speak for yourself. And your declaration, signed under seal, is your voice. Or those times when they refuse to listen to the words coming out of your mouth. You have that intent. You have that declaration. And it's posted in the public. Everybody knows it or should know it. Yeah. And it stands as truth in law. It's got to be as simple for Britain as it is for the United States.
I suspect you're right.
Free soil doctrine.
Yeah, I suspect you're right. I mean, there are so many things that come along, and they've all telling a slightly different tale. And one, if you sort of spend time grazing this information, which is what I've done. I've not really sat down and had a big mouthful. I've gone, I've got a lot of things running through my head as my excuse. Okay, it's not much of an excuse, but I mean, this sort of the whole idea of acquiring an improved condition of freedom. I mean, I don't know what freedom I mean, it's a direction to me. I don't know if it's a destination, because I think it's a journey. It's a type of journey. It's a quality of life in the journey of life that you want. And there's kind of no end to it, because you will be permanently defending it. I can't see any other way around it, that you're permanently going to have to defend what freedoms you are. And one of the best ways, were it to be achieved, is to enroll others in the similar stance, so that we... that's the key thing. Yeah, well, there used to be 5 of us, but now there's 55,000, and we're actually sort of organised. I mean, one of the things that I've mentioned here before, just in terms of national stories about who you are as a people, wherever you may be, or whatever tribe you are from, whether you're French or German or American or Canadian, or whatever it is that you have a national myth, a tale about who you are, which I think, I think it's more. It seems to be absent from nearly all of our nations. And certainly over here, because they're not teaching any history at all, although, of course, it's dubious whether they really taught much truthful history in the past as well. But it did conform to a kind of view, a vision, a myth that people would tap into. It's like a foundational plank into who you are whilst you spend your life down here doing whatever it is that you're doing. And it's extremely supportive. It's comforting, if that's the right word. It sounds a bit weak, doesn't it? But I think at times we all will experience periods of being slightly weak and not on our game, and things like that help. They sort of buttress you against what can be quite an arduous process at times, being alive. It's not always easy. It never has been for anybody. We've got different pressures now, that kind of thing. And it's reviving sort of like a big goal. We don't have one, really. This nation, I suppose, came out of a period where it thought it had a goal. We've got this thing called the empire. Of course, anybody that sat down and analysed that would find out that it didn't really have much to do with them. Just like you were saying, like we were saying earlier about birth certificates and all this kind of stuff, people were just automatically enrolled into that thing and told that it was theirs. But they never saw much for it other than losing legs and arms and the ends of their middle fingers on their right hand, stuff like that. They paid a big price for these things, always that kind of stuff. Anyway, we are towards Steve James will be joining us in hour 2. I've not checked the studio yet. He might well be lurking there. So if you are Steve and you're hearing this, that's great. He's not here yet, but I assume he'll be rocking up. I told him to come for. Yeah, no, it's cool. I invited him on to begin in hour 2. So we're going to play. Actually, I don't know what we're going to play. I did have a song lined up. I'm getting more and more anxious about songs. I'm expecting the music police. I don't know what it is. It's just I'm becoming feeble-minded as the years go by. All that kind of stuff. What did I have lined up here? Something or other.
I did send you a link in the studio chat. That is the link to the video, to the song that I sent you before, and it's very, very good.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to have enough time to do that and meet the top of the hour, so I'm just going to hit a button here with something that I've got lined up, if I can see where it is. I put so many songs in today. I've got about where on earth did I... Oh, yeah, we'll put a bit of Daniel on, Daniel Bostock. I wish he'd do more stuff.
Oh, yes, he's good, he is.
This is just a fun thing. I've played it a few times before. It's not the Homesick Dubry, which I really love, which is fantastic. Actually, the Dubry Brothers. Was I going to play the Dubry Brothers? I'm talking out my bum. Let's play a bit of Daniel Bostock. Yeah, you listen to Paul English Live here on WBN 324. We'll be back on the other side of this for hour 2, along with our guest Steve James, and the regulars in tow here. We'll be carrying on the conversation a little while yet. Here's Daniel.
I think there is the idea that we have to
it's not him.
Insist on our
borders. It is him.
There is something racist about that.
Right, so you believe that people who, like Tim Montgomery, say there should be managed or strong national borders are implicitly racist?
I think there is...
Intolerance is a preference of the far left, which portray everyone else as far right. Corbyn's poo tastes adorable, and if you dispute that, you are known as far right. John's been sniffing glue. He gets frustrated that there aren't enough immigrants. They love a bit of it. Far right. Who's that gut lord marching? You should cut down on your pork life, mate. Get some exercise. All the people, all the white people, and they all get slandered and branded as being on the far right. Know what I mean? I get up when I want, except when there's a call to prayer at the local mosque. Alright, I put my trousers on, I go on Facebook and I complain about the noise. Alright, I feed the trolls, I sometimes feed the feminists too. It gives me a sense of enormous well-being. Alright, and then I'm happy for the rest of the day, safe in the knowledge that a social justice warrior has been triggered. All the people, all the white people, and they all get slandered and branded as being on the far right. Far right, far right, far right, far right. It's got nothing to do with supporting free speech, you know. Far right, far or mocking fallacious feminist arguments that go round and round and round. Far right. All the people, all the white people, and they all get slandered and branded as being on the far right. All the people, all the white people, and they all get slandered and branded as being on the far right.
And welcome back to Hour 2, Paul English Live here, Thursday evening. I'm here with Eric and Paul, and we've been joined, I think, by Steve James. Steve, hi, good evening. Are you with us?
Hello, Paul. Yes, I'm here. And hello to everybody else.
Fantastic. Good to have you. How have you been? It was fun doing the show with you on Monday, on Eric's show. I quite enjoyed that on Monday night. That was jolly good.
Yeah, I think that was quite a lively topic of debate, wasn't it? I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed that, if that's a fair point to say. So thanks, Eric, for having me on.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it was good stuff. It was good stuff. Now, Steve, I know you're a big fan of government, right?
Oh, lovely. Yeah, lovely.
And,
Jesus.
And we all love government here. We're all big government lovers, and we just can't have enough. Me and Eric were thinking if we could only just increase the government twice as big, they'd be able to sort out all the problems twice as fast, I think. And yeah, it's all going to turn out great.
Sounds like I'm in safe company then. So
yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. So thanks for all the fellow government lovers. Yeah, I think we should all walk down to Parliament Square together and show them our appreciation with pitchforks.
I think we should. I think we should definitely do that. But I mean, in terms of one of the things that we were touching upon, I think, well, we touched on a lot of things, I think, on Monday, and it was I just went off with a lot of thoughts. And it's just the whole history of governance of human beings, right? The whole history of it. Of course, what we've got right now is we've got supposedly democratically elected governments. That's what they're called, apparently. And we're supposed to buy into this, that this is jolly good and that it's the best form of government that we could have. I don't think that's your view. And I'd be interested. I mean, I think many listeners here probably, we've got a bit of overlap really with much of Eric's audience on a Mondays and Sundays, which is great. But also we've got the WBN listeners out in the States and elsewhere. We're here for the next hour or so. They probably won't know much about who you are. So I just want to do the formal little thing very briefly. You could just give a rundown of why you don't like government so much, Steve. I'm shocked.
Yeah, I mean, you could say I've had a complete role reversal inside my own head as to why I don't support government. Because at one time, as you probably know, and many other of your listeners who I've maybe spoke to before, who I've spoke to either on Eric on Essex wonderful channel or my own channel on Telegram, which is the Occult Academy, will probably know that I used to serve the government in the form of a sold dead individual. I sold my soul as a soldier, and I worked at a high level in the soldiering capacity for many, many years. And it wasn't until, and I've used this line many times, it wasn't until I had a moral education did I realize that I was actually my own worst enemy. Because what I didn't or failed to recognize was that there's a fundamental truth to the formulation of the universe. The universe is structured to work a particular way, and if we fall foul of these fundamental truths, then we suffer as a consequence. And of course, as a soldier, I mean, I quite often say, and again, I'm not trying to upset people by the phraseology I use, but I will colloquially say that I was basically a murderer and a mercenary at the bequest of the government. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the guys I work with, I mean, I'll not divulge who and names and what have you, but we viewed ourselves as mercenaries. We realized that we were doing this for the money. But one of the big problems from that, and again, I obviously didn't know this at the time because I lacked a moral education, was there actually is a consequence to this poor lack of judgment. We think, well, we're just doing it for the money and we're being commanded to by our superiors. Therefore, we can shrug our shoulders of responsibility, but actually the responsibility is all ours. This is a condition. In fact, it's a religious condition, a religious cult, and it's known as moral relativism. And this is one of the biggest problems in the world today. We become culpable through our actions and behaviors by not fully understanding the implications of moral behaviors, and we therefore fail to establish right from wrong. So, but that probably doesn't make a great deal of sense to a lot of people right now, which is why I try to kind of expand upon this on the various platforms that I speak on.
Yeah. Did you come from a military family, or were you sort of the first one from your line to go into the military?
No, I wasn't from a particularly military family. However, my father served with the Royal Marines, right. And my grandfather was also. I'm not 100% what he was in. I think it might have been something like the Northumberland Fusiliers. He served in an infantry role, and I believe, even though he didn't really speak about his time in World War II, he actually was one of the men who was on the run in northern France during the big retreat.
Oh, Dunkirk.
Dunkirk, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so he was actually left behind at Dunkirk and kind of spent quite a few weeks on the run, so to speak.
But you didn't come from a particular, it wasn't a sort of, because some families, of course, have had people in the military for generations after generations. I've known a few people like that. And not that I disliked them or anything like that, but I just wondered whether that was sort of your situation. But so this is a relatively recent thing. And what spurred you? I'm just interested to know, because obviously your story is one of, a complete role reversal, for want of a better phrase, but it's a bit more than that. I know it's a lot more than that. I'm just giving it a tag for now. But so, did you go in sort of straight out of school? Is that what you did?
No, I was about 19, maybe 20 when I joined the military, and I actually first joined the Air Force. I'd done 6 years in the Air Force, and then re-rolled to the Army.
Right.
So, and I was there for a long period of time.
Right. So how long did you spend in the military in total then before you left?
Oh, I had a rough guess. I'm going to say it was over 25 years.
Wow.
So, without adding it up on my fingers and toes, it was around about that.
Wow.
But I mean, I don't get me wrong. I will speak negatively about the military. If you've listened to me on Eric's podcast, I will even say that the military needs to be disbanded. I mean, that obviously might sound a little bit either diabolical or crazy to a lot of people, but I mean, obviously, I can back this up with information and reasons why this should be the case. Mm-hmm. But as much as I speak publicly and openly against the military, I'm not knocking my military career. I enjoyed what I did, even though it goes against all the principles I've since accumulated. I can't look back and say I detested it and hated it, because I didn't. Frankly, I had an amazing time. I had some amazing experiences, and I worked with some amazing people. I could never take that away. But what I can say is I done all this acting out of ignorance and without an understanding of morals or ethics. I mean, I don't view myself as an academic person, but I've since gleaned information to put me on track of, at some level of understanding morals and ethics. And I'm afraid morals and ethics doesn't go hand in hand with anything that the military produce, which is death and destruction. And it can't go hand in hand with anything that enables that function to exist, which is authority and government.
Was there there's loads of questions that just sparked up. Was there one or a period or some incident or incidents that caused you to rethink your role in the military? Was there? Or was it a gradual thing that built up, or was there some sort of pivot moment that made you realise that it wasn't for you? I'm just being tame when I say that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really interesting point. I mean, when I look back and try to deduce this for myself, I realised it was a cumulative process. Yep. But one example of this is, I was, and again, I'm trying to be cautious of what I kind of reveal, but I was in a particular Middle Eastern country at which certain nations were at loggerheads with. And I remember looking back then that I'm not fully convinced that some of what we're doing here is legitimate and true. However, at the level I was serving at and for the information I was able to accumulate being there, I could not see anything that could particularly, counteract my thoughts at the time. However, I did serve in other places where I was coming to realizations that what I was basically getting involved with was just political and mutual backslapping exercises. It was all money-making scams. It was all, I would just use the terms that I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name. Was it?
War's a Racket by Smedley Butler.
Smedley Butler, yeah, thanks.
Right.
Smedley Butler, War's a Racket. Basically, I came to the understanding that war's a racket. And to be fair, many of my colleagues, I think, deep down understood this. which is why we viewed ourselves as mercenaries.
And that was a gradual
basically
process of you just observing what you were being asked to do. And as the years went by, you suddenly, it began to all build up, I guess. I'm just guessing here. I'm assuming something. But...
Yeah, I mean, there was more to it than that, Paul. I mean, I was obviously looking into things behind the scenes, but I could also reflect the information I was accumulating through the experiences I was getting on the ground, so to speak. So, I mean, in particular, I mean, some of the things that really kind of spurred my conscious acceptance or understanding was understanding what's known as natural law, which again is not something that's very well known about in the sort of wider world.
And this natural law, I know of what you refer, but in terms of your process, did you start to inquire into that whilst you were still in the military, or is that something that came to you afterwards?
No, I'd come to an understanding of natural law while still serving, and at the time, I mean, this was maybe three years or so before I left. I mean, and obviously not to the level of understanding I'd say I've got or developed now, but certainly enough to realise that what I was involved with was fundamentally wrong at all levels. Realised then that actually I'm supposed to be working for and siding with the government, then realising that actually the government are the problem here. The government are the warmongers and the criminals and, you know, the criminal cartel. But I realised, even though I tried to, and I'm using these terms flippantly, but I was trying to educate the soldiers that I work with. I mean, I used to run presentations while I was in the army to offer some of this information, but I realised that you've got to be on board and you've actually want to seek a moral understanding. Otherwise, you'll resort back to how we were really, which was moral relativists, where we just reject the difference, the objective difference between right and wrong, because it would mean you'd be in a dilemma, and if you were in a dilemma, a moral quandary, you'd either have to quit your job or quit the cult or turn a blind eye and become ignorant. And I'm afraid I could not then choose ignorance, because I'd say that I accumulated too much information. I knew too much. Therefore, I couldn't go back on truth and principle.
Yeah. So this experience, this long-standing service that you put in there, just basically built up over the years till you had a series, I guess, I'm putting words in your mouth, but of realizations, and you're going, this is fundamentally unsound, what I'm doing now. Because you wouldn't have felt like that, I assume, at the beginning. You went in with a different mindset and a different sort of context for what... Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm just wondering what your commanding officers thought when you were giving presentations to your mates about that. Did you ever have any run-ins with those or whatever?
No, not really. I mean, people were starting to think I was a little bit probably off my rocker a little bit. To be honest, I don't think people didn't reject it. This is a strange thing. Some of the lads who had worked for years, they didn't necessarily reject what I had to say. But I mean, one of my best mates, for example, I think he came up with the best line. Basically, he said, I don't care if this is the truth. I don't get paid for I don't get paid to acknowledge the truth. I get paid to do as I'm told.
There's always money in it somewhere, isn't there? And you mentioned earlier this thing, and we go back to the Smedley Butler thing as well. I mean, it's a known thing. Anybody that's not familiar, War is a Racket by General Smedley Butler. You can find it as a PDF easily somewhere. It must easily be available in the search. You should be able to get hold of it.
It's super easy to find.
It is, and it's a sort of booklet, really. It's not a monster book, so if you don't like all that kind of thing, but it's definitely worth having, because his personal experience is obviously it's at a different level, it's a different nation, but it's parallel to what you're saying, that, he started off doing his job really well, rose in the ranks, and then hits a point where he realizes that fundamentally the military is being used by people that don't have any morals or ethics, but are hiding behind all these veneers of it's to save the country and all this kind of fear-mongering crap that we have to ingest all the time. So I mean, there's a parallel there. It's intriguing. I mean, so you leave, you get to a point where you obviously leave the services. And then what? Did you pursue more sort of knowledge acquisition with relish upon your sort of release into Civvy Street?
Yeah, I mean, I actually served notice. I served legal notice on the MOD. Spoke with defence ministers, read out statements. When I was supposed to be getting, I was supposed to be getting disciplined for gross misconduct, i.e., not upholding the values and standards of the British Army, by opposing what they were trying to imply, and especially with the medical intervention. So this was about the same time, the medical intervention. So which, of course, the army were in full support of, and I would probably hasten to add that probably most, if not every, serving soldier has been either coerced or voluntarily accepted the medical product with the full endorsement of the British Army, who, in my opinion, because of that one reason, are now criminals.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've openly mentioned this to various figureheads in the MOD. And of course, they're playing a blind eye to it. They don't want to accept any of it. They've obviously submitted evidence bundles, criminal charges and citations, and obviously it's just something that they're not interested in. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, they're complicit, along with several other organizations, in crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
So obviously, I mean, whether it was within that that organization or not, that fact alone should stop anybody in their tracks and come to a realization where, even if there's an element of doubt there, people within the context of that employment should be questioning and seeking clarity on what exactly is going on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this sort of, the relationships between militaries and governors are probably way more complicated than we would get or understand from consuming films. You know, if you look back if we look back to Roman times, I know that the leaders of Rome would not allow centurions to come into Rome because they were bricking it that they would kick off and actually seize things. And there seems to be, in certain accounts, some justification for the centurions, or whoever's leading them, to be hacked off. They'd been out there being hacked at, and they would come back to this dunghole and see that basically, while they'd been out risking their lives for what they considered to be a noble purpose, or at least a good one, to defend their, whatever they were defending. I know it was a huge expansionist sort of empire that they built, which is, they're walking all over Europe, which is quite a thing. But have we ever had an incident like that in the British military? I mean, it's been different for us in a way, or it seems to me the form of it is different. I mean, because it coincides, I'm thinking, the sort of the expansion of British military power, and it goes the same for America and all these other things, are interlocked with the expansion of a worldwide trade, and supposedly to defend our trade interests. This is always the reason that's thrown up. But when they say our trade interests, they don't really mean all of us. They just mean their interests, it seems to me. And so, like I was saying earlier, we've been sold this idea that there was such a thing called the British Empire. And I suppose if you look into the word British, there was, because no one really, the British, we're either English, Scots, Welsh, or Northern Irish or Irish in these islands, predominant. We've got 3,000 other islands, people on Isle of Man and so on and so forth. But they concocted this sort of spin on the whole thing, and then used British manpower to go off and defend their economic interests. I think all this stuff, in a way, goes back to the East India Company. I'm not aware of us having necessarily a massive army in the 14 and 1500s, other than regional armies to kick 10 bells out of one another, like in the War of the Roses and things like this. These things were going on a lot. Do you think that there's any justification ever for having a military force available or to be on call to defend a nation if that nation is being attacked? Do you think it would help to have that, or do you just roll over? I'm just interested to know how you'd think about that.
These are great points, and all of this. I mean, I will have views or expressions that many people will think would class me as an extremist. I don't class myself as an extremist, not anymore. I would say I was an extremist when I was a soldier. And by the way, that word soldier, soul dire or soul dead, simply because we've sold our souls to the king, the queen, the UK government, PLC, whoever that may be. Basically, what we've done is we've submitted our freedoms, our liberties, to be used as dispensable puppets for the establishment who align themselves, and I have to say this, the establishment align themselves to ideologies which are closely aligned to Satanism, the tenets of Satanism. And I mean, I could go through them shortly, but what we kind of understand from nationalism or foreign policy or empires, these empires are literally just a soft way of using, this is just a euphemism, if you like, for militarism. So militarism is exactly what, and again, I'm using the UK government as an example, because basically that's who I worked for and that's where I live in the UK. The UK employ militarism, and I mean, I'm not the only soldier to declare this. I mean, if people look back 10, 15 years ago, they'll see an SAS soldier called Ben Griffin who accused the British government of militarism. And again, at the highest end of his profession, realized that what he was doing was fundamentally wrong. My explanations are what we are doing as, let's just say, organizations within the human infrastructure are morally wrong. So when we look at things at its finest detail, what I call a deep dive into causal factors, well, the causal factors of our current condition are aligned to the fact that we have enabled immorality into our society by following behavior patterns that are immoral in nature. And this brings me on to the factor of moral relativism. When we ignore morality and write it out of the equation, what we've done is we've basically entered into a pact of moral relativism, which is the view that moral judgments are not absolute or objective, and they can be changed dependent upon the cultural, societal traditions or expressions, and they can be changed on a whim by legislators who can change morality and just write it into, let's just say, some form of act or statute. The people then align themselves to the will of these legislators who have acted with immoral impunity. Then the entire society then enacts this immorality, thinking, well, for want of a better term, out of ignorance, because they don't know any better. The society then become immoral as a result, and we suffer the consequences of kind of ingrained immorality in society, where we find that our freedoms become curtailed, and we basically force suffering upon ourselves as a result.
Do you think that there was a time in the past when armed men defending their nation was justified? I mean, I'll just think of a big obvious one. Let's take the Battle of Hastings, right? So, which changed this country probably more than just about any other event, I think, in so many ways. I mean, I know it's a long time ago, but it did. It was a colossal change. It changed the sort of rhythm and fabric of the way that we were operating as a people. And we know from that period of history, and of course even before that, the occurrence of warfare between tribes and then extended nations and agglomerations of tribes has apparently always been with us. It's hard to find a period in history where there wasn't one every 40 or 50 years between somebody over something or this, that, and the other. So were we alive 1,000 years ago and we were called upon to go and to fight with Harold and get down there and obviously die, which we wouldn't have known about, would we have been justified in doing that? I mean, I'm thinking about the individuals. You know, it's as if belief. I look back then, maybe wrongly, and think, okay, I can see that. That appears to be an honourable display of defence. That's what it appears to me to be. I may be lacking in knowledge about certain things, which would change that view, but at the moment, that's where I'm at. So that's what it looks like. But in modern terms, and by modern, I'm thinking really the last 200 or 300 years, particularly with the expansion of commercial empires, right? The whole warping of the military to defend the nation has occurred, or do you think it had occurred before that? Do you think that military forces, I mean, to some degree, they must have always been corruptible, you know, in certain ways. But do you think what you're talking about is more to do with the world that we live in now and say over the last 200 years, that it's become really distinct, so distinct to you, of course, that you took the decisions that you've taken to view these things. But, you know, like I'm saying, if we were alive 1,000 years ago, us lot, and they came and knocked on our doors, it seems to me we'd be justified in going, if I don't do this, my wife's going to get killed. I'm going to go do that. I'm going to have to go do that thing. What do you think? What's your sort of view on that?
These are excellent points. And again, these are all philosophical notions, and if we don't talk about them, we will not philosophize, and then we'll not,
that's right,
involve in a contemplation abilities. To draw upon what you've said, I would probably say, and again, I can only say this sort of passively because I wasn't there firsthand, so I can't fully understand the dynamics going on. But if we are going to war in a battle of whatever degree, are we acting out of pure self-defense, or are we acting upon the whims and direction upon, let's just say, the king, the tribal leader, the politician of the time? Is it purely self-defense? If it's purely self-defense, then that is morally legitimate, because there are two fundamental truths in the fabric of the universe, what could be called, I mean, these are known as the pillars of enlightenment in some circles. And in Freemasonic terms, secret societies, you'll often see two pillars, Jachin and Boaz in Freemasonic terms. But what they represent is the pillars of wisdom, the pillars of enlightenment, which apply to the non-aggression principle, i.e. do no harm, and the self-defense principle, i.e. take no shit. Yep. So if we do no harm and take no doodah, then we are acting in balance and harmony with the principles and the governing dynamics of the universe. So all is good. When we act out of those two principles, and let's just say we went off and engaged in battle with another tribe because the king demanded it of us and said there'd be consequences if we didn't, act on his bequest, then we are not acting in self-defense. We are acting, A, with moral relativism, and B, we're acting out of alignment with the non-aggression principle.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying, let's just say if we were on an island and there was two people on that island, and one person decided to attack me with a coconut, well, I'm gonna use a bamboo stick and I'm gonna bludgeon them over the head with it if I had to do it to defend myself, and that's morally justifiable. If I was the wielder of the coconut and threw a coconut at the other island occupant for no reason other than I wanted his brand new shelter that he'd made out of palm leaves, I would be immoral because I'm defying the non-aggression principle, and chaos results. And it's the same in society. If society on a larger scale, a larger island with more people, employ the same behaviors, i.e. act out of principle by, intentionally doing harm to one another, then chaos results. If the individuals on that island, let's just say 63 million of them, act with more moral integrity, i.e. they do no harm to each other, then then there is consequences to that behavior which are beneficial towards society. It's known as the law of cause and effect, and it's part of what's known as natural law.
I agree with everything you've said. I suppose, looking at history through the lens that I currently have, which is clearer than it used to be, but I accept there's going to be errors in it. I mean, if there's anything that's truthful about searching for the truth, it's that on the journey you make errors, and you're continually upgrading it. Or if you see the value in it, and I think it's an extremely valuable process to enter into for everybody. You go, well, I'm missing a bit here. The problem is I can't tell you which bit because this is where I'm at, but come back in a month because I've got to research this, that, and the other. So, but through the lens that I have, I tend to look back. I'm just going to go back to the Battle of Hastings. To me, that seems justified, right? Given what I know of the situation. Okay. In that, there was a dispute over the crown, and you're saying, well, we're with Harold because this is our home, and this guy's got claims and this, that, and the other, and we don't know who he is from Adam, and we don't want this. And they were right to not want it if you look at what subsequently happened to the English after the Normans arrived. We got defeated and we paid a huge price for it. It was terrible. People don't talk about it very much, but it was not good. And you ended up with, I think we've still got echoes of it today, this so-called North-South divide, which exists in a way. There's a kind of, there was an event that took place just a few years after Hastings called the Withering of the North. And the Normans came up and killed everything. Donkeys, cattle. There was an areas of England where you could go 50 miles, which is big for England, and not find a living thing. They decided it's like a war of absolute, a total attrition, which is going to wipe everything out so that they can't recover. So, it's a pity, we often say this, it's a pity that we didn't win. And I remember even at school, even though I didn't know what I was saying, everybody got bloody Normans all the time, Right. And it's even come down to us to this day, because if you've got a Norman surname, somebody did a bit of research, but if your name's rooted as a Norman, you're likely to be wealthier than if you don't, still to this day. Okay. Wow. Which is interesting, because they took the land, they basically enslaved the peasants through all of these systems. They create the world's first tax database, the Domesday Book, all these sorts of things. So you say it's a pity, lads, that you didn't win, particularly as they just kicked 10 bells out of some Vikings up in Stamford Bridge in York, and then they walked down there in a week, and I'm going, holy crap. And the whole country was behind them because they fed them as they walked down there for a week. So, and that, as I describe that fills me with a kind of an admiration, although there's a regret that we lost, but it's meaningless because it's 1,000 years on from my point of view. It doesn't matter what I feel about it. But today appears to me, more than appears, is very different, because you've had a centralization of power. It's the centralization of government and the breaking down of regional authority that enables them to move swiftly and almost like coerce, compel, push people into situations that you found yourself in, where people, like your mate said, I'm doing this because I have to get paid. This whole thing about getting paid, which we come back to again and again. I mean, I think during pre-Norman times, pre-Norman times, the king, if he wanted to have a battle, if he needed to muster an army, he would have to go to all the regional kings, because there used to be 7 kingdoms over here, Mercia and all that kind of stuff. He'd have to talk to all of them. And it wasn't an easy talk. It wasn't like, I'm king and you do what I say. It was nothing like that at all. They would go, hang on, just a minute. What's this all about? We would much prefer to talk it out, right, than fight it out. Everybody would prefer that. But they came to moments where they couldn't do that. So I'm just saying, from a context point of view, to me, I don't know whether justified is the right word, but I understand why it took place, and it seems to have a moral stance. Look, these people are coming here to kill us. We know that because they've just killed all these other people, and they've declared their intent to do that. So do you want to just stand? Because then if you don't defend yourself, you're morally culpable for not defending the life that God gave you. You're going, it doesn't matter, this thing, and my wife doesn't matter, and all the people in the village, that doesn't matter, I don't care. I'm not fighting, I'm running away on a boat or going somewhere. to me, that's out of order. And that's why people that used to do that, they didn't, if they got caught off by the villagers, they didn't come out too well, because they're going, we're all in this together. But what you're talking about, I think, this corporatization of the world, and I think we can look at 1600 and the formation of the East India Company as being the root of this sort of corporatism in the world, which is these bundles of authorities that influence and want central government, because it's much easier for them to influence the puppets that they now have been able to place in there. I mean, it's been a mature system. They've been doing this for hundreds of years. They've got a whole system of identifying bright young blokes and women. They draw them into the services that they want. They pay them a lot of money. And their threat is, if you don't keep doing what we do, we're going to withdraw that money. And people have built a life around this. And then they become, corrupted over that thing.
Yeah.
So I think the context is pretty important in these sorts of things. And it seems to me that it is.
Yeah, I mean, these are all brilliant points. I mean, I'm not going to claim that I've know fantastic amounts about the Battle of Hastings and that particular.
Enough. All we need to know is the basics. You know enough. I think.
But what I would say, and again, obviously, as a soldier, having been in battles myself, I understand how it works. It's you get spun a load of propaganda. The propaganda works throughout your entire life, and you've had it from school, you've had it from college, you've had it from the news, you've had it from Hollywood movies, and you've had it from the cultural conditioning of your entire society. It's what I would call or term worldview poisoning, i.e. we've essentially been fed a lie, and the lie's that big now that we've basically accepted a monumental lie to be the whole truth, and we understand nothing different. And it takes a massive revolution of your own mind, your own mental structures, to kind of defeat that hurdle and realize that actually everything I've come to know and believe was actually phenomenally wrong, because I'm not standing for any truth or principle. And one of the reasons for that is simply because I, myself, and probably millions of other people don't realize the universal principles and truths that are inherent to the fabric of the universe. So therefore, life floats by without. I don't want to use the term ignorance, but I'll use the term nescience, which is a form of ignorance, but it's basically revolves around the fact of not knowing. Basically, you haven't been divulged that information, so therefore we do not know.
Yeah, you're completely unaware. You literally have no knowledge that you have no knowledge. It's not that you're ignoring the knowledge. You literally don't know it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say society as a whole, let's just say humankind, a large percentage of, are in a form of nescience through not knowing particular fundamental truths and principles relating to the functioning or the governing dynamics, the boundary conditions of how the universe is formulated. And that is kind of comes under or falls under an umbrella term of natural law, but it formulates under the principles known as, people will understand the Hermetic principles, of which there are 7. And these principles can, of course, all be opposed through the actions that we can behave through act through our behaviors. I mean, there are transgressions to this law, this natural law, and the transgressions are acts of, let's just say acts of violence such as murder, rape, assault, trespass, coercion, and deception are all behaviors that transgress moral principles. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because most people, I imagine most of your listening audience will say, well, I don't participate in any of those. I don't murder people. I don't assault people. I don't, deceive or coerce people, which is probably true of you'd probably say the majority of the world to some extent. However, what happens is, or one thing we don't consider is the fact that the people we appoint as our lawmakers, our authority, they hijack these principles and engage in all of them. So the government, for example, involve themselves in murder. That's because that's what the army does. When they send the army in to to do whatever action it might be. They might call it defense, but their act of defense involves killing other people or destroying people. Some of these people could be women and children who are completely innocent of all accusations, and have got nothing to do with whatever war or justification that they give for enabling this mechanism. But we go across and, blow them apart. We trespass upon their lands. Government, for example, use coercion and deception on a daily basis. They can't exist without coercion and deception. So what happens is society then, through its cultural inception, tolerate all these transgressions of moral principle and turn a blind eye to it because we are not physically partaking in these transgressions, but the systems that we fund, tolerate and obey actually do on a daily basis. So government is always immoral. And if we as a society are formulated behind the instructions and diktats of government, society become immoral as a result.
I mean, if you were thinking about attacking the root of this, I mean, everything that you say regarding people being placed into situations which they don't pull out of and therefore leave themselves in an immoral condition, performing these tasks for governments. As you talk, we did there's a regular theme around here, and it taps into the Smedley Butler thing, and it's, back on the finance thing. All wars are bankers' wars. And it seems to me, that this state of the use of military has come about because of the growth of central bank systems and their control of markets. And therefore, that's how they justify it. And because they've got the government actors in their pockets, because in terms of this country, of course, they moved us to a democracy after taking Charles I's head off. Right, that's in simple terms, that's what happened. They've been planning it for a long time, and of course, they're always selling, the idea of liberty, fraternity, equality, and all this other horse shit, which nobody ever sees, and it's complete gibberish because nobody can even measure what this stuff is. It just sounds great. So we've been plunged from a condition where people were actually bound up with their own tribe, their own people, which to me is honourable. It makes sense because nature ordained it thus. Not because I say so, but because you look around the earth and you see it. So whenever tribes were fighting wars, not all the time, I would imagine, but it seems to me in the main, they were morally justified to do so, unless, of course, it was an act of aggression and thievery, which many of them were. But one of the sides would have been morally defending themselves and would have had to put a military together to do so. Otherwise, they're going to get rolled over. And the consequences in the old days were not good at all. I mean, people didn't have any qualms about putting everybody to the sword and, and all that kind of stuff. So we've got a situation, though, it seems to me, this is that the government is an instrument of something else. Where do you think, I mean, if you look at the individuals and soldiers that are wrapped up in this, do you think going to them would stop it, or do you think we need something else? I mean, I guess I tend to think that there's something else needed. I'm reminded of that quote, I think, is it Jefferson Pollard now? It's Thoreau or something. For everybody hacking at the leaves, there's only a few hacking at the roots of the evil. I'm paraphrasing really badly. Where do you think the root is? In other words, where's the pressure point? And this is kind of Sun Tzu-ish, Where is our enemy, literally? I mean, part of the sort of inquiry into all these things is that you identify in all these different societies, these pockets, these movements. And the last 400 or 500 years, particularly around these islands, we've been absolutely, infested with them ever since we lost the king. And that's changed the tone of the way that the military is used. It is used, absolutely, as Smedley Butler and you and others, no doubt, have observed, that you're basically hirelings, to extend the power of a merchant empire. And it's not justified at all, except that there's some thieving entity, something that couldn't literally give a tinker's cuss for the welfare of the actual nation that they pretend to honour, as long as they stand around and parade around with a lot of bloody medals on their chest, and they all get sucked into that sort of ego space as well, So where, I mean, maybe you've thought, I don't know what you thought about that. Where do you think would be, there's probably more than one, but what do you think the main points would be for us to look at in terms of, okay, this is a weak point in their thing, or this is where we could get the most support, where we could stop this sort of behavior or begin the process of reducing it massively? What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, these are all excellent points, and these are all deep philosophical thoughts. And again, I mean, when I was a soldier, for the majority of my career, I had no philosophy. Well, I say no, I wasn't massively philosophical in my approach. I was basically just an order follower. I was a subject of mind control, as is the majority of you. I hate to say it, but the majority of the human species is a victim of mind control brought about by culture, religion, and I'm going to say dangerous cults, which is what the belief in government is. It's a dangerous cult. And the reason I say this is because you and I, and everybody else for that matter, owns their own body. Anybody who claims to have authority over the conduct of how that person regulates and controls his or her own body has made a direct claim of property ownership.
Yeah.
So government, for example, impede and prevent our actions with certain things. And don't get me wrong, some of these things are legitimate. The government, for example, will enable laws that will say, don't murder your neighbor, don't run amok with an axe, all of these things. But all of these things, we don't need the government to tell us this. These are all moral principles that anybody can really appreciate from an early age by a simple understanding of morality and ethics.
I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, if you think, we've got a problem, don't we, as well in our schools? Because you said early age, right? It seems to me that we've got a serious problem, which is that the enemy, this globalist Bolshevik cultural ideology, which is ruinous. Wherever it's spread, there's just nothing but rivers of blood, literally, that follow it, right? Wherever it goes. You ask the Russians. Well, you can't ask 66 million of them because they were wiped out by it. That kind of stuff. But we've now got that foul, satanic ideology being spread in our schools, so that children are coming out completely wonky about this stuff. And they're doing more harm to children probably than the rape gangs, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
Because this is long-standing. You go, well, what does it take to change a nation? Well, you need one generation that are taught right, but they're not being taught right. They're being taught to actually extend this disease, aren't they? So they're likely to be more liable and be made more prone. I'm just searching here. It's not sort of a solution. I'm not going, oh, that's the solution. I'm just saying, I'm looking at thinking, and Eric's probably similar because we're of a similar generation. I don't look at my schooling as a bad schooling. I actually had a lot of fun at school. I learned certain things. I know now I was being conditioned in a certain way. The teachers didn't know that they were even doing it, but they weren't talking me to chop my bits off and make me think that I was a girl, right? This stuff is not simply insane, it's pure evil. And you've got loads of these Marxist teachers doing that. So the very people that we need to oppose and to bring down this disease that has now infected all the power centres are actually being promoted into the disease before we can even take them out of the clutches of teaching. And I was saying earlier on, I bumped into this guy, Philip, the other day, in his mid to late 70s. He was just talking about his granddaughter going to the same school that he'd gone to, And I said, I wouldn't send her there, mate. What would you want to do that for? Oh, she's really looking forward to it. I said, I don't think you'll be looking forward to anything that's going to happen to her. I said, why would you take these precious things that are in your family space and offer them up to the devil? I didn't say that, but that's what I was thinking. I don't use that sort of language on the layman, but I'm thinking, why would you do that? And it's because I guess the intermediate generations, of which I'm one, have been softened up as well. This has been a long in the making, as if we've been studied like rats in a lab, which we have, and they've slowly broken down all of that undetected but very precious glue that used to bind us together as one people. And therefore, they've managed to wriggle their way in. And now it's all about ideology. And you've got to believe in this. And we're all the same. And all this other, it's completely unproven in nature. If it were proven in nature, it'd have been like this for an awful long time. So whenever a bunch of guys particularly come along and go, we've got the solutions, you've got to just go, whoa, hang on, just a minute. And yet this stuff has worked. I'm just saying, where would we be best? Where would we best serve? I asked myself this as well. How should I use my time tomorrow better than I used it yesterday? Can I use it better? And the answer is I can, but I haven't found out what it is yet all the time. Although I'm not sort of ashamed of what I'm doing. It's not like that, but I'm just thinking I could do better. Yeah, how could I do better? You have to, noodle on it. It does take a lot of thought.
I mean, it does take a lot of thought. That's the linchpin of this whole quandary, if you like. It takes a lot of thought. I mean, I was a soldier, and I'm just an average kid. I was never an academic. I was never a philosopher or any of these things. But I stumbled upon information that kind of, you could say, opened the fabric of my mind to be able to accept and reveal certain truths and principles that I probably wouldn't have engaged with prior to that. I would have stumbled through life as a blind order following numpty for the rest of my existence. But I mean, these principles apply to everybody, no matter of race, culture, or creed. So natural law, for example, applies to the environment, and it implies nature. Nature is, let's just say, whatever a person's particular beliefs may be, nature is a product of creation. Therefore, it is inherent to the fabric of everything that we know and can see around us. I explain natural law under my own phraseology, if you like. Natural law is the governing dynamics of the universe that set the conditions we experience, formulated upon the consequences from our collective behaviors. Mm-hmm. And I kind of summarize that by saying that moral behaviors formulate harmony, which enables freedom. But immoral behaviors formulate chaos, which destroys freedom. So the world is going through, I will often say as well, that the world is suffering from spiritual problems, which are rooted in consciousness and are maintained by ignorance, by a state of ignorance. Ignorance is an easy one to fix, because ignorance is basically just a product of accepting information. And consciousness is an act of perception. So basically, if we perceive with we receive information and we perceive it and accept it, then we can fix the spiritual problems. So spirituality, you can say, is ultimately a measure of freedom. So if we are not a free society, we are not free because spiritually we have not set the conditions required to attain freedom, which is formulated upon moral behaviors. So again, some of this stuff might sound a little bit confusing to anybody as a first-time listener, but if we take, for example, moral behaviors, what do they not include? Well, they don't include things like murder, assault, rape, theft, trespass, coercion, and deception. Yep. All of these things are transgressions of morality. What we can deduce from that, if we were to simplify that, we can then say, well, negative behaviors or immoral behaviors are any actions that cause harm to other people. So
yes, anything that's aggressive. Steve, I'm just going to pull you to a halt here, because we're just coming to the end of the second hour. We're going to carry on afterwards, and we're going to leave WBN. We're going to play a little song, courtesy of Paul. So I've picked it up, Paul. You'll be very pleased. We're here with Steve James and Eric and Paul, and we're going to carry on. If you want to call in after the break, please do. And if you want to carry on listening, head on over to paulenglishlive.com, and you can pick up some of the stuff from there. Here's a little song. Here we go.
Now, here comes the music.
We'll see you after this.
You ain't learned your lesson since you became royalty, and everything that went down Whitewater, Benghazi. You wouldn't use Filegate to spy on me and mine. I've been waiting a long, long time. Cankle's in custody. Well, it's about time. And the body count. What will we find? With Cankle's in custody, old Epstein would still be doing time. You were untouchable, like Joe in his basement. You went on to be a national embarrassment as the body count grows. Pay for play money was spent. Cankle's in custody was heaven sent. Cankle's in custody. Well, it's about time. And the body count. What will we find? With Cankle's in custody, old Epstein would still be doing time. Oh, play that thing, Bill. Oh my, that closet so large. Maybe we'll finally find out who's in charge. It ain't gonna be easy. From what I can tell, the person in charge said she's gonna drag all us to hell. Cankle's in custody. Well, it's about time. And the body count. What will we find? With Cankle's in custody, old Epstein would still be doing time. Yeah, still doing time.
That was sweet as a peach. Cankles. Paul, what are Cankles? That was called Cankles in Custody by Kenny Boy, remastered. Did you do the remastering, Paul? Has he gone?
He's gone.
Look how there. I'm giving him all the credit and all that kind of stuff, and he's not even there to bask in the glory of his work. I don't know what a cankle is. There you go. Found something that I don't know. Anyway, we're back here. Is it? Why is it? Do you know what a cankle is, Steve? It's a what?
It's a fat ankle. It's a fat ankle.
Right.
A chubby ankle. It's a beautiful song, by the way.
Yeah, I never heard it before. I just play these things blind. You could catch me right out. You could have given me a right hummer of a song, but that was cool. That was really good. Yeah, fantastic. Anyway, we're here for hour 3. Eric, anything you want to say? You've been wonderfully.
Yes.
It was. I really enjoyed that hour, Steve. That was really good.
That was fantastic, wasn't it?
Well, I want to carry on some more stuff with that. So we can build on that.
My granddad used to say, "There's always a little good comes out of bad," and I'm seeing something where history may be repeating itself, because I've said this several times on my show, but people don't realise that, and it's been hidden from us, the true reason for the end of the First World War. And that was because the French army mutinied en masse, and the German Navy mutinied, and it spread like wildfire. And the authorities tried to censor it, but word of mouth went round very quickly. And there was a program called the monochlord mutineer. And it sort of happened in the British Army, but not quite. Now, come forward to this modern situation that we've got now with the Iran and Israel and the States. And it seems that the American forces are not happy about what's happening with Iran. And there's cases where it's said that, for example, an aircraft carrier, the crew deliberately clogged up the sewage system, so he had to pull into port in Greece. Didn't go into the ocean where it would have been it had been a target.
Yeah.
And and I can see, shall we say, it's becoming like a Vietnam, where the war it's the army fighting against itself whilst they're trying to fight a war. And people are taking it onto their own. Like, for instance, I don't like the idea of fragging, but that's what they did in the Vietnam War, where they would throw a fragmentation grenade into the senior staff's tent so they didn't have to go on operations the next day and risk their lives.
I guess, Eric, it's going to be really difficult to find out the truth on these things, isn't it? You've just mentioned that sewage thing.
It is difficult.
You just mentioned that sewage thing. It's really interesting because I just realised it's so easy to be had all the time. Seriously, like your guard, you can't keep it up all the time, so it's best to not consume this stuff. The story I saw there was that they said that it's an aircraft carrier, right, that you were talking about with the sewage? Yeah.
That's right, yes.
So one of the stories they were putting out, and you don't know what's true, really, seriously. What is it? Truth's the first victim in war? Or the lie? What did Churchill say, that lovely chap?
Correct.
That the lies have to be protected with a bodyguard of armour, because that's really or the truth does. It doesn't really matter. One of the stories they put out about the sewage was that it'd been designed wrong. They designed it wrong and the pipes weren't big enough, and therefore they had to bring it back to refit it. But that would be just a cover story for the fact that actually they got a rebellion on their hands on the aircraft carrier, wouldn't it?
Well, it seems like.
How do we know?
I've actually seen. Well, look at that American. I think he was a Marine, all in his uniform, that was in a public building, saying we're not going to fight for an Israel's war, and in Israel itself, apparently, I was listening to an analyst. He said it's very difficult to keep the rivaling fractions calm, and the only way they can keep it going is to have a war. So there's unity in there. But thousands of Israelis are leaving Israel, and because they don't want to be in a war. So I think there's certain things happening behind the scenes that we're not being told about. We don't know the full truth, but I do think that shall we say, hearing things on the grapevine, there does seem to be. I don't think the Americans are that keen. The forces are going to war in the Middle East.
Well, you can't say you blame. You can't blame. There's a lot more knowledge, I would have thought, just generally around, whether people have got specific knowledge or not, about some of the things that we're touching upon here this evening. I know we touch upon them regularly, and we need to. It's important to keep on doing that. But I think that it must be wider spread, simply because, if you look back prior to this dissemination of information, whether it's all good or bad, it's tricky. You've got to be sharp. But the last big World War II and all those ones in the middle of the last century, nobody had any ways of finding out an alternative viewpoint. They couldn't even acquire one. There was only one viewpoint being expressed. So we would have been lumbered with all those guys back then, because we'd have gone, we're doing this to save Britain from Germany, who posed no threat to us. But you can't talk about that. But because they said we're not coming to have a war with you. Can we call it off? No. Churchill was keen on something else because his controllers wanted it. Again,
That's right. But they didn't have the internet, say, after the First World War. But this country was on a knife edge in the early 20s. Whether there was going to be a revolution, because you had a lot of military-trained men who were a little bit more than a bit peed off that they come back to worse poverty than when they left the country to fight in the trenches. And we were very, very, very close to an uprising in this country, very close. But the thing is that now we've got the internet, people are finding out more, and our education is better on things that have happened in the past, and we're finding out more. I'm reading between the lines. I just get this feeling that there's something not quite right. There's something definitely. We don't know the full truth, but as people are saying, a fire in a laundry room of an aircraft carrier that took 30 hours to put out. Oh yeah, oh really?
Yeah, those are not the reports of a battle-ready force as you would expect it. I mean, really, as we mentioned him, we'll mention him again. Mr. Butler and Mr. James here are basically typifying that understanding. This is, you see, you go, hang on, just a minute. Am I fighting to defend my nation? I don't think so. No, you're not. And that thought must be occurring more readily with more people all the time. We'd like to think so. Maybe I'm the Ron Hopeful of the conversation. I'd like to think it's happening. I don't know.
Yeah, but they've got economic conscription. And this is what we've had in this country, economic conscription. And that is that in America, in order to get through college, the military promise people the earth to entice them to join the military. For example, the film Top Gun, when that was shown, they had the recruiting sergeants in the foyer of the cinemas. And a lot of these military films, the military are there recruiting impressionable youngsters into the army, or into the, not necessarily army, into the forces, shall we say.
Yep.
And the thing is, they find out it's not quite what they were told, and this always happens.
Although they may get a free pair of Ray-Bans if they go into the Air Force, which is possibly worth it for them. I don't know. I'm being trite when I say that.
Yes. Or look at the film Oh, What a Lovely War. There's a fantastic scene from that where the fresh recruits are about to go up to the front, and there's an Australian unit sort of lazing about on the grass, and one of them shouts out, "There's a lot of shortages up the front." And there's all these sort of white-eyed, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Royal recruits saying, "Shortages? What they got a shortage of?" And they shout out, "Coffins."
I mean,
and I think that's no, seriously, I really do believe that something might come out of this Iran war that we least expect, and it might be for the good of everyone. You just don't know.
I mean, maybe we'll get Keir Starmer out and we'll get some other genius in, and that won't make any difference either. No. It won't. I think more people are cottoning onto that. But coming back to those things that we were just ending off on hour 2, in terms of, I mean, Eric, I'd be interested to know, where do you think the key... Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to have a day tomorrow. We're all going to have a day tomorrow. It's called Friday, apparently, and we're going to have a Friday. Hopefully, we all make it through the night and have tomorrow. What is it? What's the area that we would be best put to use in? I mean, it's difficult because we're not dealing with something that's just cropped up in the last 5 years.
Yeah,
this is so long-standing. It's ancient, this adversarial view of how life should be organised. And basically, there's a small group, relatively speaking, numerically, but very powerful, because they've learnt over thousands of years, they've acquired the skills to effectively manipulate the perceptions of us through emotional blackmail. You need to do this to defend your nation. I mean, government basically is, in all its phases, a massive protection racket. You need to do this. You need to take these tablets to prevent this disease. Really? Do I? Who made the tablets? This pharmaceutical company. Are they making money out of it? I mean, we're not going to get conversations like that. But we've hit this insane point where the very wealth of the earth, we're not allowed to access it because people can't make money out of us if we don't do that. If we do that.
Yes, but meningitis is the next one, isn't it?
They're organising that now.
Oh yes,
That's organised, is it?
That seems so. That's all nice, isn't it? So you have a lockdown. So when they run out of bleeding oil, because they can't get it from the Middle East, it won't worry because it'll all be locked down anyway. They won't be able to use their cars. But I think that really people say, "Oh, people won't stand for it." Yes, they will. Because you look what happens in the last lockdown. I was the only person walking around in a large supermarket without a mask. I mean, what is the matter with people? I mean, that should have been 50-50. But people, oh no, we can't wear a mask.
Well, maybe when they throw the next one, we might see a response that's more encouraging to our viewpoint, you know.
Hopefully that we will. Because, you know, there's only so many lies that they can tell. But
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think that it's just... I don't know whether it's even planned. I just think it's a disposition that they have. They just use deceit as a default position. To them, I don't think it's even lying. It's just sort of like, hey, this is the game we're playing. We're going to be in charge no matter what. No one else is getting in charge ever. And they've had a long time to sort of subtly put in place all sorts of little hoops and defense things and all that kind of stuff. Just, Steve, I wanted to ask you something. Somebody actually mentioned it in the chat as well. I know you do these things, but this is just to sort of bring it up in conversation. You do presentations, and I know you do. Right, yeah. You do them with Nathan as well. What's the sort of? I mean, maybe they're about all sorts of things. Why do you do presentations? I know why you do it, but I just wanted to ask you an open question. You know.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for asking, but basically, the presentations that both Nathan and I give are on the subject, which is not very widely known. It's known as the occult, and a lot of people will run away immediately and hide from that very word, thinking it's somehow connected with evil. But, I mean, and I'm not going to lie, parts of the occult, what's known as the dark occult, is associated with what you could class as evil deeds or actions. However, the opposite side of that, the occult, is about shedding light upon the world in order to bring about an understanding of, and again, what Nathan and I teach more so is something called natural law. Natural law is basically what we were talking about earlier, the governing dynamics of the universe, which applies to everybody, no matter which country we're from, what religion we're from. This applies to everybody because it's formulated upon the fabric of the plane that we exist upon. So it applies to us all. But what's happened is this understanding has largely been kept hidden, which is what the word occult actually means. It means hidden, and it refers to knowledge. So the hidden knowledge of natural law is what has enabled society to become less free than they should be. So when we, as a species, get to grips with some of this information, this hidden knowledge, we can then be in a position to claim back what is rightfully ours, which is our freedom and liberty, all of which is stolen by an organization which is better understood as a dangerous religious cult, and this cult is known as the cult of statism, i.e. the government. The word government, incidentally, from its Latin terminology, gubernare mentis, actually means mind control, M-I-N-D. When I was a soldier...
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll let you speak, Paul.
Well, I was just going to say, it's an interesting government. I was thinking about it the other day. I mean, I'm familiar with what you say, but I thought, I don't mind government as long as it's, and I'm using the word in a different way, as long as I'm the one doing the governing of my mind. In other words, my mind has to be governed by something, I think, and maybe has is the wrong word. It's better when I apply discipline to it and have a self-evaluating mind. And it's that ability in part, I think, one of these qualities, I've met people like this, who are able to stand outside of themselves and observe themselves almost like as a third party, behaving either well or ineffectively, for however you want to describe it in the circumstances. We're talking, I think, about the inner voice that is your own government. That spark of goodness is more than a spark. This ember of the creator is the way I view it, that you're trying to feed oxygen to, and the form of oxygen that feeds it is truth. It makes it grow so that you begin to perceive more things. So we're all going to have government. What we're saying is an organised government of external men telling us what to do is not what we mean by that. It's not what I mean by that. You know?
I mean, can I of deduce from what you're saying that you would say it would be unfair to employ threats, violence, constraints, or other actions to coerce someone into doing something against their own will or better
Absolutely.
judgment.
Yeah, because it produces nothing except harm.
Well, yeah. Well, that's interesting because that definition is basically the dictionary definition of the word duress. So duress is the main principle of mind control employed by the mind controlling cult known as government. If we don't act upon the will of government, there is either an underlying threat, i.e. we don't comply, there will be consequences, whether it's fines or imprisonment, or there's a physical consequence, i.e. arrest or imprisonment, which is a physical act of force used against people for not complying to the will of somebody who claims to be morally superior. And again, when I said earlier, we own our own bodies. The government don't own our bodies. If they do, that means that we are slaves and they are slave masters. So if we can't act upon within our own rights and our own freedoms and liberties without government dictating those terms, we have accepted duress as a mind controlling factor, and we have positioned ourselves as slaves to their demands. So this is, of course, one of the reasons why society is never going to be free, because we don't think free. So we need to start thinking free by establishing the difference between right and wrong. And one of those, I mean, just to put some meat on the bones of that, a right is, strictly speaking, is any action that we take that does not initiate harm towards another living being. So if we're not doing harm to somebody, we don't need the government or anybody else to tell us how to live our lives. We're just simply living as nature intended. We're doing no harm to anybody else. And if somebody takes those rights away, nature commands or will certainly demonstrate that we have got the rightful ability and authority to defend ourselves using physical action if required. Self-defense, do no harm.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I mean, it reminds me of, well, I think if you're brought up well, if you're fortunate enough to be brought up reasonably well, your parents instill that in you quite naturally.
Yeah.
And it makes sense to you quite naturally. I mean, nature itself, the physical universe, teaches you some really blunt, sharp, at times painful lessons. Like, I put my hand in the fire and it really didn't work. No, I'm not doing that again. Good, that's sound. That's so there's from the moment you're born, you're banging into things. You go, oh, that hurt. I don't like that. The pain is kind of part of the teaching process. We're in a lot of pain now. It's almost psychological pain, simply because we've not, well, not simply because, but part of it is that we've not examined the conditions that we live in. I mean, to a great degree, we've been, I include myself, unconscious about things because there was no spur to become conscious. You become very conscious of a hot fire. You only need to do it once, unless you're a maniac, right? You only need to do it once. You go, I'm not doing that again. Great. I'm really for that because we don't want to take you to hospital and all that kind of stuff. So it begins this teaching process. It's just that when we've sort of moved into a human authority system, the threats are, the duress that you talk about is very subtle and relentless. It seems as though, oh, you let that go. No, it's the small things that have built up into this big condition where we have been placed in unknowingly until people suddenly go, hang on, it's now hurting so much, I've got to pay attention to it. And it's tragic, but it's as if harsh lessons are the only ones that we learn from because we slope off. I'm just, it's not true of everybody, but it's kind of like that.
I love some of the terminology and points that you've just alluded to here, because you said something along the lines of we've kind of been stumbling along unconscious to certain things, and I totally agree. Earlier I said we've got spiritual problems rooted in consciousness, which are maintained by a state of ignorance. Ignorance is an act of insufficient knowledge, which we can easily acquire through just reading a book or looking at the internet or coming to Nathan's or my presentations, where it explains some of these principles that have been kept hidden i.e. these occult secrets that the secret societies who own government don't want us to know about. Rooted in consciousness, which is all about perception. So as you said, if we're not perceiving these things, one of the reasons we're not perceptive to these laws in nature is the fact that we are kept under a constant state of duress, which is a subliminal form of mind control, which is what the government keep us under through constant bombardment of fear. Everyone probably cottons on to that now in the truth and freedom communities, that fear is what the government are good at. And when we're in that disposition, we become less able to employ the higher aspects of our neocortex and prefrontal lobes, which is where the higher philosophizing and reasoning is centered upon. When we break out this fear loop and the constant worldview poisoning that's manipulating our conscious perception, we can then formulate freedom, because freedom is a product of spiritual awareness. Now, spiritual awareness would enable us to perceive fundamental truths in nature, which take reason and ability to see. So you mentioned before that if you stick your hand in the fire, you know immediately that you don't want to be doing it again.
Instant feedback from the physical universe. Yeah, it's instantaneous.
So the difference with what would come under the umbrella of natural law is natural law formulates over long periods of time. So we don't get that instant understanding. You know, I mean, it's likened to when Wile E. Coyote runs out of a bank carrying a load of money and an amber will drop on his head. It doesn't happen like that in nature. It takes a long period of time. It's known as consequentialism. This happens over time. When we formulate behaviors that are chaotic and disorderly, the conditions that we, the consequence of these behaviors over time result in our lack of freedom. So when we perceive a lack of freedom going on in the world, which is what we are right now, it's because of our accumulated behaviors leading up to this over a long period of time. Yeah. So the way to counteract that is to basically influx the world with more morally accepted behaviors, and over time we will see results from that. So again, it's all of these very simple things. Don't cause harm to other living beings. And when more and more people, and I'm not saying in an ideal world, nobody will do this, but we don't live in that world. So what we can only hope for is more people will start to realize these laws and enable them by their own individual responses. And one of those biggest things is don't subscribe to an authority that claims immoral ownership of property that does not belong to them, i.e. you and I. We are not the property of the government, so why act like it? Because the government employ all of these transgressions, murder, assault, theft, trespass, coercion, deception. I mean, the health emergency was probably one of the biggest examples of that in recent years. Complete deception from start to finish, and that caused a lot of harm to people, i.e. assault and murder. So sadly, the human race without government wouldn't have been able to perform that. Only a governing body can create those conditions. If you get rid of government, or you stop the belief in government, the universe will begin to harmonize.
I mean, I think that the idea of, obviously, the process of the removal, the reduction and then the ultimate removal of government from our lives, in terms of government as a group of individuals who think and do think and feel and have been indoctrinated into believing that they have got to be in charge, will take time. I tend to think that a way to achieve that is that instead of fighting them, which is more of that immoral stuff getting back into you, it's understandable why people feel that way, but fight is the wrong word. I'm using it intentionally as the wrong word. Is to embrace the good and to go back to that. Because actually, we're not even going back to it. It's latent in everybody. It's what's causing impart conversations like this. We're not the only conversation like this that's taking place in these spaces, which is great. We don't want to be the only one, and we want it to be much bigger. We want all these conversations to be much bigger. I sense, I've got no data to tell me otherwise, or for or against, that that this process is happening simply because the external conditions are becoming painful for people. And it's like I was saying, it's the harsh lessons, unfortunately, that are the ones that end up working. It's got to get, I'm not one of these, it's got to get worse for it to get better. But it does appear to me that this seems to be the case. It takes an awful lot to push people into embracing consciousness because it's an uncomfortable process. Your internal regulation system is saying, but I know everything, because this is what the mind does, right? The mind goes, particularly in politics, which is useless as a communication space. I mean, absolutely useless, because they're all right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, everybody's right. And being right is worth less than nothing, because it's just stuck at that level of complete bickering, which is all it is. And no one's actually pointing out that, but you're not wearing any clothes. It's the emperor's clothes. You've got nothing on. But they're completely drawn into the theatre. They're not as big a victim. I hate the idea of it. I don't even embrace it. You're a victim if you say you are. You're not if you step outside of it. The Stoics, what do they say? It's not. You can't control what happens, but you can control how you respond to what happens, and that's where it kicks in. And so, freedom, is it not inextricably linked? And I would say probably the same thing as an expansion of your own field of responsibility. As you look at things and see things that are out of whack and you take responsibility for correcting them, you become freer in that process, because you begin to see the things that the day before you didn't see. You're now in a different part of the journey. We've just come into this mountainous bit and now we got this problem. Okay, but I see it. At least I see that I see it. I don't know how to solve it yet or how we're going to deal with it, but I'm now aware of it, and it's creating awareness of the problems. I mean, you mentioned it earlier with this word nescience, which is an important word. Most people are nescient. They don't even know that they don't know that there's a problem. Although I'm going to say that they're less. Those numbers, I'd like to think percentage-wise that they're dropping, and people, even normal people in the street are beginning to wake up and take notice. I had a funny little thing. This is not, I don't know if this is even on point. Today on my little gadabout, I had to go to the dentist. That went well. My teeth are still in my head, and the dentist said, your teeth are fine. I said, well, this is good. And I've not had any trouble from my teeth for a few years because I'm just whatever. And so I'm walking down these shops, and there's a charity shop there. I mean, where infested is the wrong word. There's a lot of them, right? A lot of charity shops. I think it's like that all over England. Anyway, they had all these books there. There was the complete works of Shakespeare. So I picked it and looked. And there's a nice gal stood next to me. I said, fancy reading this? She said, oh no, I can't stand it. I said, really? I said, it's tricky, isn't it? And we're just having a chat. And I said, well, they don't teach it in schools. And she said, oh, I hated school. I said, really? She's really quite well spoken. She said, I didn't go until I was 11. I refused to go. And she's older than me. And I said, good on you. I said, what was that all about? She said, I wasn't suited for school. I let my parents know, and I just made it such a problem they couldn't send me. I said, that's fantastic. It was really good. Yeah, it's just inspiring. You see, if you don't, you prod people, everybody's got something really interesting to tell you. Everybody just needs to be heard to some degree, and suddenly you go, wow, we've got all this treasure around us, but you haven't got it if you don't use it or you don't find out what it is. And she said, I went to university, though, later in life, got all my degrees and everything, and so yeah, when I wanted to. She said, but I didn't want to do it when I was young. I said, well, I don't think boys should go to school till they're at least 11. They should just let loose in the wood and climb trees and put their hands in fires and learn all this basic stuff. It's nature's a tremendous teacher, but of course it can't teach now if they're locked up in a room being told that they can chop their testicles off and turn into a girl. It's just, that's kind of where we're at, unfortunately. It's not unfortunate. Yeah. It's by design, by the other side. They've worked on this.
I agree. I mean, it's all part of that worldview poisoning. It's basically full spectrum domination at every principle. I mean, I was a combat soldier, so I intimately understand how warfare works, how it's formulated, the principles behind it, the techniques and basically the methodology behind it all. I understand it at a high level, and basically what government are doing is they're employing warfare techniques. I mean, there's even a word for what they're employing upon the human population, which is cognitive warfare.
Yeah,
it's basically full spectrum dominance of our psyche. They've taken ownership and possession of the way our minds function. Therefore, what's happened is society has then become combat ineffective to fight back and resist this mind invasion.
And much of this has come about, it seems to me, with the arrival of mass media. So you get newspapers in the 1800s. And of course, I mean, there'll be other events like this, but the World War I is a marker for this, because this is when they began to use psychological warfare on civilian populations. So the common one for World War I is Germans are running across Belgium with babies on pitchforks. That was and they took, after World War I, they took all that stuff and basically, courtesy of Chatham House and these other sort of think tanks, they've employed those techniques on civilian populations. And there've been some brilliant documentaries about it. I've forgotten that English guy that did some great stuff about it about 10, 15 years back. It aired on ITV and Channel 4 or something like that. Really good stuff, fantastic things, looking at the whole structure of society, the implicit commands within advertising and all sorts of other things to get us to behave in a way that's absolutely counter to the natural order of things. And they've been very successful at it, unfortunately. And of course, the entry into newspapers cost a lot of money. And yet, I think in the early days, I don't know what it's like in England, I know more probably about America, they had all these regional papers, all independent, representing the area, with lots of editorial disputes and life in them, proper discussion of points. But as we know, I don't know how many media companies there are in the world. What is it, 4 own practically everything in the States, or is it 5 or 6? I mean, it's a joke. And that's been aided by the bankers, to extend their hegemony as they perceive it over us lovely goyim. Moo.
Exactly. Earlier, you'd mentioned. You kind of paraphrased a quote. I'll say that again. You paraphrased a quote along the lines of, "There's lots of people hacking at the leaves, but very few people,
hacking at the root." Yeah, I can't remember who said it. Paul would know. You ought to know. It's an American guy. I think it was Thoreau, but I can't remember.
Quite possibly. I mean, it's a brilliant quote, and a brilliant sort of allegory behind it. But the fact of the matter is, the causal factors or the root of the problem that we are facing is what can be deemed to be morality problems. So when we talk about the awakened community, people have established themselves as becoming more consciously aware or awake to the goings on in the world, simply because something has challenged their sense of morality. So when I say moralities, some people have come to, they're watching some particular event on the news. Let's say it was the health emergency, or it was an event such as 9/11, and something's triggered them into questioning things simply because they saw what of these issues has affected their rights. They may not know it at the time, they may not even know what their rights are now, but something has sparked their inquiry because their rights are being challenged by the event that's been created. I.e., if something affects a person's rights, then it's basically a moral issue. So morality has affected our fundamental God-given rights, which are given by nature, not by the government. And people have come to question them because instinctively they've seen this problem going on. So the root of the problem is a moral problem. And if we were to understand morality, i.e., and it sounds really condescending, but if we were to understand the distinction between right and wrong at a deeper level, then some of these issues can be exposed at the roots and dealt with accordingly. I mean, I can put a little bit more meat on the bones, if you like, there, Paul, if it's helpful.
It is. Just hold on to that thought. I just want to acknowledge a comment in chat. XO, thank you very much for that. The chap I was searching for when I was talking about the English guy that made the documentaries, Adam Curtis. And if you've not seen it, everybody, hunt it down. I don't know where you could find it. 2002, he made a brilliant one called The Century of the Self. I'll just read you the notes because this is all part of the problem. How Freud's theories on the unconscious led to the development of public relations by his nephew, Edward Bernays, the use of desire over need and self-actualization as a means of achieving economic growth and the political control of populations. It's major, is this stuff. Public relations is a major sort of conditioning element of the whole advertising, commercial induction. We're like being inducted into Satanism. It's a satanic order, and just coming over to that word, it comes from a Hebrew word which is shaitan, which means adversary. Specifically, it morphed into the adversary of God, or the God-given natural order of things. And they are in opposition to this. This is why the world, to a great degree, is the way that it is. You can still, I think, build a little oasis for yourself, and probably we all need to from time to time, just to remind ourselves that there is some good in this world, and it is worth fighting for, Mr. Frodo, as Sam Gamgee said. But it is. But Curtis has done some brilliant things. Thanks for that, XO. Steve, back to you. I just wanted to get that in there.
I'm glad that was brought up in a sense. I mean, one of the things. I don't necessarily highlight this as what I teach because I use an umbrella term of the occult and natural law is what I kind of present on. But what I allude to is something called ideological Satanism. And just exactly what you've said there, Paul, is Satanism or Satan comes from shaitan, which means opposer or adversary. And the adversary or the adversarial current is that which is opposed to the natural order. So it's not a dude with a pointy tail and horns. It's basically just a symbolic representation of man at his base level of consciousness and his egoic desires, which takes him or her away from formulating behaviors based on natural law principles, which is what we need to formulate peace and harmony and freedom. And because of which we don't get freedom and harmony in the world, because basically we've strayed or we've become adverse to the natural laws in the universe. So we are fabricating the results of which is chaos and disorder. But in terms of Satanism or ideological Satanism, it's formulated on four major tenets, one of which is moral relativism, which is basically about accepting or not accepting the objective principles of right and wrong behaviors.
Yeah.
Believing it to be the will of legislators or the will of a governing body who make or dictate the terms of right and wrong. Selfishness is another tenet, as is something called social Darwinism, which is basically the acceptance of, let's just say, the divine rights of kings, or there's the social hierarchy, which is inherent. Of course, this is basically a satanic ideology. So kings and queens should not exist. There should be no social hierarchy. This is all man-made mind control elements. And the last principle is something known as eugenics or eugenicism, which is the belief that certain strains or genetic structures should be eradicated and some should be encouraged. So all of these things are inherent in the fabric of society, and more so if we adhere to the principles employed by government.
Yeah. I think maybe Satan, the anthropomorphization of Shatanism, was possibly one of their first PR stunts. All of this thing, because it induces fear and anxiety and duress in the congregation. That's what it does. I will save you from Satan. Hang on, just a minute. Aren't you actually performing that very role? Sorry, just a minute. We'll protect you. No, we need protecting from you, the people that keep posing as the protectors. You're the problem, mate. But they're never going to see it. I don't think. I mean, I wouldn't waste my time trying to get through to people like that. I mean, it'd be great if they just woke up one morning and said, I think we'll stop all this. That's never happened, and it won't. They're on a certain trajectory, and it's completely at odds with the natural order of things. I mean, it just is. The other thing with communism as well, which is, another part of all of this, It's been the public face of it, and you only have to look at the history of it to realise what a complete jackass of an idea. I mean, the idea that people get into that and think that it's somehow something noble is beyond me. They cannot actually look at the track record of this thing that they're involved with. It's sick beyond belief, and it is a mind disease that they've got. But they, of course, at the heart of it is the denial of the existence of God. I'm just using the word God. You might use source or the great hidden central sun of all existence. Something. All I know is something created me, and it wasn't me. I didn't do it. I don't know how my kidneys work. I'm really glad I've got them. I don't know how they work. My body, everybody's body's doing gazillions of things right now on autopilot, and it's stunning when you think about it. There's 4 trillion cells in your body. It's all by accident. All this sort of stuff that they, with Darwin, even Darwin didn't even necessarily believe his own theory, but they took a hold of it and championed it to do it. And the thing is that once you've denied God, if you say, no, I don't know, then life just becomes about the here and now. That's all it's about. It's all short-termism. As a group, as a tribe, you lose or you deny a long-term vision for the future establishment of your people and growth. Growth in the best sense of the word, in terms of every parent wants their children to be superior to them in every single way, physically, intellectually, spiritually, morally, ethically, in terms of the way that they behave and do things. That's part of the process. We're at the long end of a long line. Maybe people behaved in the past with greater nobility and courage, but they also had some pretty bad habits as well. They were pretty violent in certain regards. You could say, well, those were the nature of the world at the time, and I think it was the nature of the world at the time. I think that without understanding all that, it's very easy for us to sit in the position here and cast all these judgments on people in the past for cocking it up. And I sometimes do that. But overall, what mistakes are we making right now that future generations, if there are any, will look back and go, those idiots around COVID period. Cool. Why didn't they do something? Why didn't you do anything about it, Dad? Well, I did this and I did that, but there weren't enough of us or whatever. But so the denial of God is a biggie to me. Not because I'm not battling for organized religions. They are the problem. They step in and go, oh, you need us to interpret all this stuff for you. No. That's exactly what we don't want. If you really want to raise me up, right, you teach me on the ability that I'm at. I mean, going back to the occult, right, that you were mentioning earlier, which simply means hidden. There's a reason why much of it was hidden. I mean, Socrates... Basically, they killed Socrates because he was revealing things he was part of a mystery school, all these mystery schools. Why did they spring up? Because we could go, oh, they're all evil and bad. No doubt there was some of that. But it's like any other organization. You've got good and bad people in it who come in for whatever reasons. They're on their own path and they do things. But the reason that they kept certain information back is that they felt, probably rightly, I don't know, I wasn't there at the time, that it would cause more harm than good, that it would confuse. It's a bit like, I've said it before, it's as if we were to go and teach mathematics to 5-year-olds and we start off with calculus. And so stop doing that. Why? You say they can't comprehend what you're saying. You're really confusing them, and you're going to retard their ability to actually learn naturally by overloading them with stuff that they can't. And that's fundamental, in a way, that's what Socrates was accused of. He was revealing things to them, and they said, don't do this. And in the end, they killed him for it. It's not that he was thick. Far from it. He said some absolutely amazing stuff, and I'm so glad he did. I read out a few weeks ago his analysis of democracy, and it's spot on, 2,500 years ago. And he basically said, with democracy is going to give everything to anybody that wants it. It'll give power to criminals, you'll be ruled by children who'll want respect, wise men will be ignored, and democracy will give it to them all. Because it's about a group mind, which unfortunately will always sink to the lowest common denominator. That's what happens without a context, So it's fraught with all of these paths, even of bringing sort of enlightenment and light in. You've got to be careful with what you're doing. It doesn't seem like that, I think, at first. I mean, that's a sort of a command back to myself. Be careful and try not to bite off. And we've all done it, bitten off more than we can chew. Sometimes my brain just locks. I go, oh, bloody hell, I can't figure this out. And I just feel stupid in the face of it. 2 years pass by and I go, now I see what they were driving at. It takes time, something that we feel that we've probably not got enough of, I suppose. But yeah.
Well, one thing about the occult, I mean, because this is essentially where how I've come to accumulate a certain knowledge and understanding is because I've become privy to what would be classed as occult level information. Again, not because of anything I've done secretly, or this is available to anybody if they wish to seek the time and put the time and effort into it. It's all available online, for example. So everything that is hidden or secret is available. It's just we need to really be able to channel where to look. I mean, I term this precision education, and I could maybe certainly divulge a couple of things that might be helpful to people later on. But I will often say that we've talked about ideological Satanism, which is essentially the religion that the world is formulated upon at this point in time. Yeah. We are formulated upon satanic ideologies. One of those being something called social Darwinism. Social Darwinism would draw people to the conclusion that there is a hierarchical structure which is natural and acceptable, but what that does is it takes people's understanding that we are actually all born equal and free. But then we grow into a society that reprograms our mind into the acceptance of a dangerous belief system. And the leaders of this, let's just term it a religion, they conduct and maintain a morality in order to generate power and wealth. So it's just, all it is a spiritual battle. And this spiritual battle is those who wish to have their egos stoked and to benefit from wealth and power. They use a knowledge differential upon the masses of people. They inhibit and stunt our ability to understand certain things, and society then supports the system that's basically depriving them of birthrights. We basically enslave ourselves.
Absolutely spot on there.
Thanks, Eric.
And I actually think, what can we do? Because we're all, those of us that can see through it, are frontline soldiers, basically. What can we do in our own way? And I think we're taking steps in the right direction. For example, with Food for Thought Radio, a bowler hat farmer, and you're doing what you're skilled at doing, Steve, and Paul's doing what he's skilled at, and I so for other people to judge, I'm trying to do. It doesn't matter how small it is, but all of us have got a skill of some kind, a unique skill, I believe, that we could utilise just literally to bring our enemy down, because they've got to be brought down.
Exactly.
And there is communication skills and things like that, but I feel often frustrated because you speak to people and they're sort of happy in their own ignorance. And it's they go into a kind of self-denial once you tell them the truth, because I mean, my neighbours around me, you've probably found the same, they worship the big pharmaceutical religion. And my neighbour today said he has 2 COVID jabs a year. 2 a year.
Yay! Why not make it 3? Don't muck about. Get on with it.
Well, I remember, I'm old enough to remember, I don't know whether you were the same, Paul, if you were a good boy when you went to the dentist, did you get a lump sugar? I did. Remember that? Seriously, you used to get a
You'll be back
sugar.
before you know it, lad. Really, yeah, we give you more sugar, you'll be back here next week.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just...
More money for the dentist. Yeah, I'm not a bad dentist.
Oh, yes.
I'm not an evil dentist.
Have this lump sugar, boy.
But Eric, your point about people being... And look, we've all been in that condition at some point in our life, right?
Yes,
that's why you can recognise, the other stuff where it's going in the right direction, because you've been in the bad place. You didn't think it was bad. I don't mean it was hellish, but you're in this sort of that kind of dopey space where there's no you don't have as much focus on, and it's just natural. It's normal. You arrive as a baby. You don't know much. Everybody's completely beguiled by babies. Well, I am. Because they've still got the sheen of heaven about them, or wherever we come from, right? You go, wow, a brand new one. It's amazing. They're absolutely stunning babies. I know, because I was at birth of both of my children, and I went, and it blew me away. It was like the biggest events in my... I was just absolutely so whatever, right? All that kind of stuff. It's true. You don't bang on about it. Well, I just did. But that kind of stuff. Off you go, you know nothing, and you start putting your hands in fires, and away you go. And it's as if you come in a state of perfection, and you descend into the darkness. You don't think you are, but you do. And then for some of us, there's like a spark kicks off, and you go, hang on, there's something not right here. Because when you're young, you're intimidated by adults because they know everything, right? They can do everything. And thankfully, you've got your parents around to do all that stuff, like make sure the house is warm and feed you and all that stuff. You don't think of it in those terms, but it's important, right? But these people that don't know stuff, when you look at the conditioning that so many generations have received, it's not... I mean, it's completely understandable why so many people have not been able to see these things. People have all sorts of different lives. They come out of different spaces. They have parents that are amazing. They have parents that are not so amazing. I'm being kindly there, right? There's bad parenting has taken place by people who have produced children and are not responsible for it. I can just walk away from this, and that kind of attitude, which upsets me. I don't like it, because you know that you're laying in problems further on down the line. I think the other thing as well is, just going back to the occult aspect, the way of creating distinctions, is light comes out of the darkness. It's the darkness. And let's get romantic. We are the light seeking to come out of the dark. That's how it works. And without the darkness, you can't see the light. You've got to have that background, that contrast, to be able to detect light. Maybe it don't work like that in different realms, but in this one it does. At this stage, in whatever our spiritual path is. And spiritual's a funny word. Everybody, I meet people go, I'm so spiritual. I go, what do you actually mean by that? What do you really mean? Everybody's spiritual. The minute they're not spiritual, they're dead, right? The animating force is your spirit. But we're talking, I know what they really mean. They're sort of reaching out for a higher state of understanding and kindliness and empathy and all of these good qualities that we want to see more of in the world. But everybody that's walking around has got a spirit. The minute they start walking, they haven't got one. What condition it's in is another question, I think.
Well, look at Starmer. I don't think he's got one. But quite honestly, though, when you look at, for example, the most ardent anti-smokers are ex-smokers. Now, we've all been through this sort of conditioning process, and we are more ardent than anybody else. That's because we were conditioned. So I think there is something, and I always go by this, mass formation theory.
Yeah.
30% of people believe anything the government tell them, they're dead, forget about them. 40% of people go with the flow, and 30% of the people are us. But all it needs is 5% of that 40% in the middle to come over to our side. It starts to tip. Yeah. And we're starting to tip. And that's all we got to aim for. I mean, when I speak to people that are gormless, I just give up with them, basically.
We're just about out of time, Eric and Steve. Steve, can you let people know how they can get in touch with your work, and also when your next meeting is, or how do they find out a bit? I know you've got a Telegram channel, so you might want to talk a bit about that, but how do they find out a bit more about you?
Yes, sure. I mean, I'm based up in the northeast, where it's cold and
of course,
and
good.
There's igloos and stuff, but I have a presentation coming up with a guy called Mark Barr, who is a YouTube presenter on something called the Coop Files. That's on the 29th, which is a Sunday. That's in a place called Seaton Delaval. But I'll put information of that up on the Telegram group that I co-host with Nathan Lucius. It's called the Occult Academy. And if you don't mind, I'll put a link to that on your
get stuck in. That's what it's all about. Yeah, absolutely. Cross-pollinating. Yeah, brilliant. Just go crazy. Absolutely.
So that's on the 29th. The Occult Academy that I co-host with Nathan Lucius. Nathan and I also do podcasts on YouTube. We come under something called the Drunken Alchemists. So basically, the solution to the crisis we're going through is alchemy. Alchemy is the process of lead to gold. Yeah. We need to be less lead and more gold. So I'll put some information on your site, Paul, if that's all right.
Steve, it's more than all right. It's what this is all about. I've really enjoyed tonight, Steve. It's been great, really good. I'll probably follow it up with some private conversations with you maybe early next week. And I'd love to have you back in a month or so's time. It'd be really good. I know we meet up on Eric's show from time to time, and that's always cool as well. So fantastic. Thank you very much for this evening. I've enjoyed it a lot. It's been brilliant.
Very welcome.
Thanks everybody in Rumble and YouTube. You've so much stuff. I couldn't even read it all. It was absolutely flying at one point. So I hope that's a good sign. I think it's a good sign. We'll be back again same time next week. I think Monica Shaver will be joining us because it's the last Thursday of the month for an hour. We had her on for an hour last time and that worked well, so we'll bring Monica on for an hour next week and maybe somebody else. We'll see you then. But thanks to Eric and to Paul and to Steve, our special guest tonight. We'll see you all next week. Bye everyone, keep good and bye for now.
Cheers. Bye-bye.